This show is sponsored by the ComX Shop. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tuesday Chinwag, and my name is Leigh Chalker. I'm the creator of the Australian independent comic book series called Battle for Bustle, published through ComX Studio, and tonight's episode is simulcast across two live stream channels, one being ComX Network, the other being Aussieverse. You can see their addresses across that little yellow ticker box running across the bottom. So if you want to check out all things comic books and Australian stuff, jump on there, investigate for yourself. They are great communities bringing everyone together. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe them anywhere you can find them. So look, I'm going to introduce tonight's guest. G'day, Nick May. Hello, mate. All comments are welcome throughout the evening. We will endeavour to get to them. Hello for everyone out there watching. In case I miss any comments, we'll get back to you as best as we can. So my guest tonight is a gentleman that I've wanted to meet for an awfully long time, and I guess the universe just brought us both together when it was meant to. And I'm going to just show you this right before I introduce him, because I went to the comic book shop many years ago, and on the counter was, we were just having a laugh about this, so on the counter of the comic book shop was this: "Doesn't your happy face need a rest?" The list. And I thought to myself, hell, I'm going to check that out. So I did. And I went down, well, let's say, and a pretty impressively mind-blowing story. And it left a mark on me. And I wanted to meet the man for a long time. And man, here he is, Mr. Paul Bedford. How are you, sir?
I'm good, sir. What an intro. Thank you. Firstly,
pleasure.
It's lovely to be here. This is very nice. And we obviously spoke briefly before the show. And I was most surprised and delighted to get an invite onto your show. I'll just move over a little bit. I think I'm trying to show off my board games in the back there. Because, you know, I had been out of the scene for a little while, and like you said, I think the list did make a mark, which I'm proud of. Proud of Henry and Tom's and my work, and it's nice to be remembered after sort of not moving away from it, but just sort of naturally moving into other things. You know, I think it's been maybe 2018, so that's 6 years since I've attended a con. So it's lovely to be on. It really is. I was most delighted in it. I said to my wife, I've been asked for onto a free-form interview to talk about the list, which is just, I've been looking forward to it since. So basically what I'm saying is thank you, Leigh. It's great to be here.
Mate, it's a pleasure, because I've been looking forward to it since I got in contact with you, man, because it's one of the things about doing Chinwag is, on my journey over the last period, I guess, I've had a lot of time to reflect on life and investigate things that give me great pleasure. And one of the constants in my life has been comic books for escapism and, all manners of things, really, man, and just the love of the medium. And you had always, left a mark with me with the list. And Chinwag has just been one of those blessings for me too, man, to be able to meet people that I have admired and I'm peers with and friends with, and just people that I never thought I'd have the opportunity to touch base with, man, and sit one-on-one, and talk to you about your journey and stuff like that, man. So I'm very grateful for your time tonight as well, man. So thank you so much. And for the people that don't know you, man, and your work, I certainly, man, it's I can't wait for to find out where you gestated this from, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I can say. I'm like feverish with anticipation, man. So before I get into like the existential introduction, my portal let me down today, but this is how long I've had this. So
Oh my Lord.
this, I believe, was one of your, if not the first version of this, man.
That is I hand stuck those stickers on.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm using this DNA now, man, to clone a Paul Bedford baby. So I've set up the tanks over there in the back corner. So you never know, man.
Don't do that to yourself, mate.
Oh, hey, man's got to make some money somehow, brother.
That's great. I'm
Right.
so wrapped you've got that version. I do have. I've got a couple here. Look at the original. There's the original artwork by Tom Bonin,
Oh, wow.
which I just love. I just love. And if you haven't read the list, don't look too closely at the cover. It actually has spoilers on it. They can pause and go.
Well, I got it, and there's a review on the back in particular, right? That when I got it, I thought, other than that little like tag, I was like, this is the quote from paperbackreader.com. I'm afraid that I won't be able to review the list as the material appears to be too disturbing for me to read. So when I read that, I thought to myself, yeah, that's mine. And because I'm pretty game, man, and open-minded and stuff. And I'm certainly glad that I didn't listen to that review, mate. So, but there we go.
So, yeah, that was a difficult one to put on because it almost sounds a bit too much. And I struggled to put that one on because I didn't want it to sound like quotes are great, but I didn't want it to sound like a boast. And I actually asked the girl, I can't recall her name, but when she sent me that, I said, look, this is quite personal for you, but can I use it? Because, that's the first edition of a self-published comic. But it's also probably a better warning than what's on the front. There are violent works out there, but for the list, I didn't aim for violence. I aimed for not gratuitous use of violence. Violence was a tool to show desperation and to show fear and to show pain. That's why the fight scenes are long. And so, but when she agreed to let me have that, I'm like, thank you. That's a really nice quote for what people might face inside with regards to themes and tone. And themes and tone, I think, is where the list touched people more so than the violence.
Yeah, I would agree. It touched me with the theme because it was one of those comic books that you get some pieces of work, and it's no disrespect to anyone. Like, I mean, we've all had them where you read it and it's good and you put it down and you sort of, I guess it just sits on the bedside table, or it just, sits on the table or the coffee table or wherever you like to store your comics and look after them. If the Grayleys, are listening, yes, all our comics are put in slabs, but for or else they'll pick at the queue. But for the people that like to read their comics, I've found that with the list, man, I've just gone back to it, over the years, man, and I'm a particular, and my great mate Ryan Valla and I talk about this regularly.
I worked with Darren Close recently.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
Great dude.
The book.
Great dude. Amazing creator. One of my best mates. And
really good work.
We've got a massive love for outlaw themes and outlaw ideologies in comics. All comics have their places, don't get me wrong. I'm not just picking one. I love them all, and I love the creatorship and the effort that goes into all of them. But the outlaw side of things. I love just people that, while they have questions as to whether they should, that's about as far as the question goes, because within you, you know that this is what you need to put out. It can be confronting, but it's personal. It is you through and through. There's a certain authenticity to it, which I greatly appreciate that in my older age. People being themselves, and not making any excuses for being themselves. I think it's a great quality. I see that come through in your work, man. At the time I found that, man, I was really, really heavily, oh God, man, you know, like I'd been obsessed with The Crow for a number of years and stuff too, you know, and that's a regular thing that I always went back to. And
masterwork.
Yeah, man. And that was why the list really appealed to me. I've always had a love of black and white artwork as well. The artist you chose told the story well. It's some pretty vivid stuff. I think that I haven't seen your scripts, but I'm assuming that what you gave them has certainly come through in the pages. And I'm hoping by the end of us having a chat tonight that people out there that haven't read the list will go and check it out, because I believe it is a piece of Australian comic book work and creativity that definitely deserves to be read, and I would strongly recommend it. It's certainly not for the weak of heart. I wouldn't let your children read it, but if you're game and you're an adult and you want to try some things, man, go and check this out. So, Paul, mate, we're going to I always like to just start off. Dave Dyer, good evening, mate. What a legend he is. Peter Lane, hello, good sir. And as always, Ryan O'Connor, howdy, brother. And Gary, hello,
Gary.
mate.
Gary wrote one of the greatest reviews of the list. Hello, Ben. I treasure it. I treasure it.
Hello, Bo, and thank you, mate. You remind me of Rolo and Floki from Vikings. I'll let you two decide who I think is who. Okay. Yeah, right. Well, thank you. I think I've never seen Vikings. My mother was a big fan of them. So if we can't work it out between us, I'll let my mother decide at the, later on this evening. When,
I have a sword. Where are you? Are you in Victoria?
No, man. I'm in far north Queensland, bud.
I was just going to suggest a gladiatorial combat, but it's a little late if you're in.
Oh, well, it's certainly making interesting Chinwag, mate. You know, like two blokes just jousting, you know, like through the questions. I mean, we don't have to do it physically. We can do it verbally.
Look, I'm honestly not interested either. I had a week off last week with the flu and somehow blew my knee out. So I don't think I'm getting into any sword fights.
Hey, well, Paul, mate, the more you tell me about what you've been through the last week with your colds and your blown out knee, man, the more I'm liking my chances here. So we might have to tee that up shortly while you're still out, man.
Might be hustling you, Lee.
Yeah. All right. So, man, we'll get into the big existential question before we drift into the fluidity. And Mr. Bedford, who?
That's an interesting one. And coincidentally, I called I spoke to a longtime friend today, Amanda, and I've known her since high school. She calls herself a lazy stalker. She's lovely. She's fantastic. And during the conversation, the reason I called her was because she's come up with an endeavor, a project she wants to follow. And so I called her in the interest of, you know, having a chat about it and see where she's going with it and what she wants to do and all that sort of stuff. And I kicked off the conversation in two ways. The first one was that I thanked her for letting me call her when my brain had reduced itself. Not reduce, a shot of juice. Like I got my brain back after a pretty creative and pretty full-on weekend. Mm. So it was nice. It's nice to, I think that like a true measure of friendship is when you can say, I can't call you today because the conversation wouldn't be worth it. Okay. Mm. I would rather, you know, let's chat when we're both at the same place.
Yeah,
Um, and the second one was to, like I said, to talk about her venture. And I said, she's always supported a list, and we've discussed the list and all that sort of gear, and the other creative works I've done and doing. And I said, it's lovely not to talk about my stuff because, and this is getting back to who you asked at the start, because who for me is difficult to answer because and I've come to terms with this a lot, because you've got to not let the ego get into play in two different ways, because there's two different ways the ego can get to play when you talk about yourself. One, it can start to boast, it can start to, you know, sort of exacerbate yourself or your achievements, or, you know, even subtly. And the second is to self-deprecate, or to not want to talk about yourself because you feel like you have nothing to say, but what you have to say isn't necessarily that interesting. Yeah. And I tend to fall into the second because I don't like to talk about myself. But when you're talking about what you do, and there's a whole argument about what you do is who you are, then that's great, you know. So who I am is someone who enjoys pursuing a vision. So I like to pursue a vision, and the list was a vision. And the other things I've created, like I had a board game release with Mattel when I was 25. I've been working on a board game for 6 years. And in each of these instances, especially the first time I created a board game, and with the writing and release of the list, was that I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about those crafts or about those worlds. I'd never created a board game before. I'd never played them, and I'd never read comics, and I'd never written one. So it was coming from a place of, when most people say, "Who are you?" I say, "Paul Bedford." If you're walking down the street, but on a long form, when you want to go deep, man, I'll go deep if you want to go deep.
Let's go.
All right, so knowing nothing, and that can be an egotistical, like, oh, I know nothing, and yet I did this. That's not where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming from is that it can be both a place of vulnerability and a place of power, because it's a place of vulnerability because you accept that you know nothing, so you're just doing it for yourself. And the list was written for me. I wrote the list for very personal reasons, which we would get into. And it's a place of power because you're free of influence. And when you're free of influence, you can do anything. And you don't feel that you have to, as we were talking about briefly before with regards, before we started, was you have no expectation because you have no illusion of outcome. So the list had no illusion of outcome. I felt it was powerful because of what I felt in me and what had to come out. That was the power I felt in the story. And you also mentioned another word before, which is interesting. With regards to your podcast and starting your podcast, you said it was pure, and it's such a great word, because pure means your intentions were all honest, and what you've created was a result of just pure action. And it doesn't mean perfect, and it doesn't mean that it just means your intention was made real because of your vision, and that's where the list came from. So the list was pure and it was honest. It's by no means perfect. It has its faults. My God, it has its faults. You know, it's like with Peter Jackson can't watch Lord of the Rings because all he sees is the problems. I suppose most creators go through that sort of thing because you second guess yourself all the time. I think the creation of the list was the most pure and cathartic, one of the most pure and cathartic experiences of my life, putting that down on paper. And I can tell you in one example why that is. Since I was young, I suffered from like regular bouts of debilitating stomach aches, cramps that would floor me and wipe me out. And the night that I wrote the script for the list, the day after, they were gone. They were gone. they were gone. And I didn't notice for a while. Like I didn't wake up going, "Oh, I'm not getting a stomach ache this week," because it might be every 2 weeks, or it might be a month, or it might be 2 or 3. But it was only like after a long while, I'm like, I have not had one of those stomach ache like attacks in 2 months, 3 months. And I didn't know what to attribute it to. I had no idea. And it was only long after I'd written the list and it had come out and it published, and when I talked to other creators about the power of simply putting things on the paper, that creative process, how incredibly healing that was, how cathartic and therapeutic and healing to get all those demons, I'm trying not to swear, get all those demons onto the page. And that's why I think it touched people, not because of the twist, not because of the violence, not because maybe it was a combination of those things. Henry did beautiful art, which brought all my intentions to the fore, and Tom did beautiful inking, which suited Henry's art and suited my script. So the only thing I can think is that I succeeded, not that I had the intention to make that story touch anyone. I think it was I succeeded in just getting that out and getting that onto the page in the way it did. People identified with it, and that above all in the creative process is, to me, that is the gold. That is the gold. Sales are great and great reviews are great, and all that sort of stuff is fantastic. And if you're denying that sales are good, you're lying to yourself. If you're denying that great reviews are great, you're lying to yourself and other people. The recognition of your work, especially among your peers, is amazing. But if you can touch the people who find your work, then there is nothing like it in life that I have felt aside from the birth of my kids. Nothing matches it. So that's who I am. So that's a lot. I gave you the short form. I mean, everyone's complex. Everyone's incredibly deep. It's the tapping into it and the creation of a story and that shared recognition of the other side of us, even when produced in a non-threatening medium like a comic, that we can tap into. Like, and everyone has that. And the people I met that it touched, that was, you don't anticipate the effect that it has on you until you see the effect it has on others. And then you are just like, I can't, I cannot, this is going to take a long time for me to register and process like what you just said to me. Yeah.
Man, I'm I just wanted to give you space there to say that, and I didn't want to interrupt interject until the right time. And there's a lot of things that you just said there that 100% resonate with me. So I just wanted to say that. Yeah, that I can feel you there. So I totally understand where you're coming from. Hello, absent-minded. Totally, 100% understand, Paul. It's like when we were talking before about no expectation, you know, that was a concept that I truly became aware of through my second teacher I started much like I have my story, but this is about you. But I just want to let you know how I give you
Just
some
about me.
sort.
Let's. I'm happy to let's chat about us. That's the good stuff.
Yeah, well, I pain obviously the list very personal. I can see that. That's why I always wondered, like, who was this person that did this, because I felt that too from what you'd putting down. And I was certainly picking it up at the time, you know, whether that was something I went through at that moment. It's resonated with me through into my adult life. It's one of the few comic books, you know, like that has always stuck in my mind, as I've said. Your answer to what you just said about who you are is a beautiful thing, because I believe I have gone down a path where the I is just an illusion. We are everything that we've tried, succeeded, failed, touched, loved, experienced, man. It's just a journey. And when you take on that moment of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to create, and you put everything aside and you bleed on that paper and you put yourself into the most vulnerable position you ever possibly could, there's a thing of beauty in that, dude. And that's why I respect what you just said there, because that's exactly my thoughts of creativity at this current point in my life. And I certainly make no excuses, and I don't hide behind the fact that, man, I say it nearly all the time, I had a huge ego, man. I was stuck in an echo chamber in far north Queensland with people that, you know, like just fed me full of, you know, wow, man, look at your artwork, look at this, you know. So it was lovely at the time, but as you grow and, you know, get better and better at things, you know, like these things are negative to a certain extent of what you want to become within yourself, because you get caught up in what other people think of you. And I think that's certainly what I admire about the list, man, is I always thought that whoever wrote this certainly has a pretty good idea about themselves. I'm not that. Some other people may be listening right now, and they may, when you just said, when you wrote that script, suddenly my ailment that I'd had since a child had left me. And maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I would not have completely understood what you had just meant by that. But I 100% get you there, dude. I think you and I are on a very similar path, and I just wanted to put that down, that I think this is going to certainly be a very good chinwag, because yeah, I'll leave it at that, and we will continue the fluidity. But yeah, let us continue, sir. And no expectations. We'll come back to that at some point. But mate, I want to get back to a little bit of a light-hearted thing here, because I mentioned
it was light-hearted.
Yeah. Well,
that's what I say to everyone I meet. Like, who are you? And that's the spiel. I mean, that's got it memorized.
beautiful. No, but we spoke about this briefly when we were Paul giving everyone the feels, indeed. And so we should, man. It's a lovely thing for someone to be themselves.
That's lovely. Lovely thing to say.
And now, I mentioned this to you when we were talking briefly about organising the show and stuff like that. Now, you said to me that no, you don't remember, but I'm going to give you a breakdown of my memory, okay? Because and let the audience decide who listened to this. So, all right, yeah. So, I'm thinking it was probably 1995, 1996, maybe. It could have been a little bit later, than that. But let's work on pre-millennial bug. Let's say that. And at my comic shop, they used to get like little news. Like someone had sent around free news. This is coming out in Australia, or this shop's open, blah 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 blah. Anyway, I used to collect it, and I found this. There was a little ad, and it was fella in Melbourne wants to do a comic book, has a story, and at the time, now I'm going to put the pieces together here, all right? Like we'll just jot them together because, like, man, I'm telling you, I reckon the two of us are in the room. We just, but hey, memory may be different. So
yeah, okay,
and it was a fantasy-based comic book that was, the idea was based on the notion of it being tentatively comic book board game themed, okay? So the gentleman in question, whose first name was Paul, I might add.
Not ringing any bells yet.
All right. So, asked for some samples. So me being a young whippersnapper and all that, was always drawing, sent off these samples and came back. And before the internet and emails, we had actually been conversing by brief telephone calls. This is back in the day, like this individual and I had been talking through like telephones where, to ring up, like Victoria, because he was from Victoria too, I might add. And, it was cost a couple of bucks, mate, per minute back then.
If it's me, if this was the words leading, like I owe you some money, if that's the entire premise of bringing me on, you could have just messaged me on Facebook and I'd
no, it's not about that. Don't stress, mate. It's I keep my own list, brother. So don't you worry about that. You're not on it. So it's and we actually had like conversed through things, this individual and I have the letters, but I couldn't find them because I wanted to confirm. And for a long time, I thought that was you. And because, board games, this, just, I guess, like it dots, like sort of joined to me. And then I was like, wow, is that him? And I was messaging you that, and you were like, yeah, I got no idea what you're talking about. And oh man, I roared laughing. So mate, I've been carrying around this baggage.
Classic.
I don't know, man, 25 years or something. You know what I mean? Like, and I was put down so gently, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I got no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, but anyway, it's neither here nor there. But I like to think that, on another parallel.
I'm not saying it wasn't me. I just don't recall it being me.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, man.
I mean, do you remember what the art was? And you're saying you spoke on the phone to this individual. You spoke on the phone to them. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And you were just about, and this is what brings me back, because you said you put out your first board game in about 1995, 96, just earlier.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that, you know, now Paul, I'm not sure here, man, but you know, if I was a bloodhound, man, I'd be sniffing some blood, man. Like I think I'm on a track here, brother. And you know, like, and you were at the time we were talking on the phone, you were also this individual.
Hang on, you've changed it to you and me now.
Yeah. This is where I'm going.
Okay.
And this person, whom I believe is you, was telling me that you were about to you just got your contract for the first board game, and
it's sounding a lot like me, Lee.
Yeah. Well, I
again,
mean,
I think I fill in most of my life's events from other people telling me them because I don't remember anything.
Well, in a strange way, Paul, I'm pretty sure that you and I have connected at some point in the past, and just about 30 years later, mate.
Amazing. We should have done this podcast this time next year. It would have been our 30-year anniversary of not knowing we'd met.
Mate, we could have had streamers. Yeah, I know. You know, how weird is that? You know, like we've met, but I didn't know we'd met each other. But you know, like, so yeah, I don't
remember putting an ad anywhere. Was it a comic shop?
Well, that's how I remember it being. But you know, obviously, CSI Chinwag, haha. So there you go. Man alive, you know, and you know, it's
Does he always do this? Ryan, does he always do this? Is this what he does? Is this what it's all about? Just bringing people on and saying, you owe me a couple of bucks from 30 years ago, and I'm sure I met you.
Hello, guys. No, man, I just look, dude. It's really funny.
That's a great story. That's fantastic.
With the Chinwags and stuff, that I just find it's a beautiful thing that, you know, as you go down. I guess, like, I'm just going to surmise here, and I hope it needs a dramatic theme song indeed. I'm just going to just surmise, man, that from how we've already spoken to each other so far, that there's the distinct possibility that you, if not have been on a bit of a spiritual path, per se, in search of oneself and all the, you know, certain things that lead us on these journeys. I have been as well. And still am, and it's just something that, you know, when you start to realize things like that, everything truly in its own way is connected. You can take it down to the comic book community, and man, it's just amazing how many people have touched at certain points or intersected, crossed, you know what I mean, and then through just a series of events have, you know, like, been brought back together. So
it's like a niche thing.
Yeah, it's odd, but oh well, you know, like, I'm going to leave that up to the audience that's listening to decide whether or not Paul and I have never met.
Turn him into a jury.
Yeah, why not? Everyone have a vote by the end of the show, you know, like, and winner takes all. There's nothing to give, but, you know, like, there you go. You know, we'll send you a high five, you know, full of love.
Yeah,
all right.
The bookmark.
And rock on. But man, what so let's we'll take me out of the equation now and get back to you, man. But I just thought that was a funny little story. And glad we sort of got some, if not no, clarification on that at all. And, you know, but mystery is everything. So if I guess where I would take it, and I'm going to let you, like, just roll with this. What was the attraction to doing the list, this intensely personal thing of yours, and you said, like, comic books can be an innocent type medium, and I would think they've got more so chancy now, and people see it in an artistic way to voice themselves. But at the time, the other thing with the list that I recall is, for me, one of the most important times in Australian comic books that I remember was the time the list came out, because It seemed to be a little. You there?
My son's just turned up. I'm sorry, Lee.
That's
1 second. I have hello.
That's
Hello.
right. You can say
Hello.
g'day.
I'm,
Hello,
hello.
mate.
Come in. Come in.
Ah,
How
see,
you
this is
going, guys?
you hear the chin wag. Hello.
Hello. This is Rosie and Lorcan. Daddy's
Hello,
being interviewed
guys.
about there's Lorcan, my basketball hero, and Rosie, my gymnastics heroine. Daddy's just on an interview. Okay. That's when Leigh here is talking to me, and he's going to put it on his YouTube channel. Okay, we're talking about Daddy's writing.
Are you going to go on YouTube?
Yeah. How's that? Hey?
Yeah.
Hey?
I see.
Well, I'm gonna talk to Leigh now. Okay, sweetie, I'll come out and
Are
see.
you going to go on grown up YouTube?
Hey?
Are you going to go on grown up YouTube?
Yeah, grown up YouTube, but I think you'll be able to watch it.
Yeah.
I'll ask Leigh if you can watch it. Okay.
That was
All right.
very-
Mwah. All right. See you, dudes. Love you. I'll be out. I'll be out a bit later. Hi, Liz. Thanks for bringing them home.
Good night.
I love that. I was listening so intently to your question, and then I heard the front door, and I'm like, oh man, what timing? What timing? Okay, sorry.
That's
sorry.
perfectly
So you were
fine, man.
saying,
This is the fluidity of
I love
Chinwag.
it. I love it.
Children and family
yes,
are
mate.
always welcome, man.
Sorry, mate.
Mate,
Oh,
that's fine.
That's excellent. Although it should be in Richmond colours, mate.
Yeah.
That's excellent. That is lovely. That's lovely. All right, I'll chat soon, buddy. Sorry, mate. I'll just make, if it's okay, to briefly go over.
Paul,
what
there
you
is
said.
absolutely no reason for you to apologise, mate. It's
Cool. Thanks,
perfectly
mate.
perfect.
Lovely.
So
Lovely. I've gone all
don't
blurry.
be stressed about it. With what I was getting to, man,
Why
was
am I blurry? Is that my camera?
I don't know. Maybe probably help with. You probably want to take your hand away from the camera, but
Yeah, that's strange. Actually, I look
yeah,
better like that.
sometimes
Takes
they
away the
lose a little
wrinkles.
bit of focus, man. You know, there you go. Look at you.
Oh, there we are.
Magic.
Now they got full resolution again. Those poor viewers.
All right. Hello, Alex. And so, mate, I reckon that this came out because what I was getting to is like now people seem to be a little bit more chancy with their creativity, and
Right.
I suppose like independent comic books are the way for people to go and stuff. And for someone that wasn't obviously comic book bound at the time, to have this need to get this particularly like very personal story out that has led you down the path of even a childhood ailment, like releasing itself in order for you to put this into a comic book format. It was also hugely chancy at the time because from my memory of a young man, I often think of that period of Australian comic books as being extremely important because there wasn't a lot of stuff happening that I knew of, like from maybe in the biggest cities, but from the regional areas of Australia, things were, it was all Marvel. It was all this, like the late 90s boom had sort of died down. Killaroo was kicking along. There are a few others that were popping up. But then, you had superhero movies. You had, like pretty regular sort of stuff. Dark Horse was coming in, but not even Dark Horse, like just dropped something like that, man. So,
Right. Yep.
Incredibly important, I believe, for the time. Because you did have a lot of momentum going with it as well, like because you had different editions. If memory serves, at the time you were also you were writing feverishly like scripts for like TVs and films and that, which I want to get into with you as well, just for a breakdown with people, for people. But so I guess what I'm saying is at the time you brought out the list, comic books were a little innocent, like you were saying before. And then you went and dropped that grenade, man, into the Australian comic book scene. What was it that you just went, no, this is best formatted in comic book? You didn't just go straight to screenplay. You didn't just, go and try and pitch something to a TV channel or something or whatever the pathway was. What was it with the comic book medium?
Okay, so firstly, I did. I think that's probably relatively unknown that I wrote it initially as a screenplay.
Yep.
But like with my absolute lack of knowledge or contacts in the comic world, I was in the same situation with the screenplay. I had no a bloke in Bandura, Storman, just had an idea.
So this thing's had to come out of you, man. It had to come out of you.
Had to come out.
Yep.
And I took it to like an independent filmmaker, and he nailed it when he said you will not get it produced in Australia. Even though that is like Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright? I got the name right there. Who's the guy who did Romper Stomper?
I don't know who that is. I can't remember.
I think Jeffrey Wright's price to go with me. Following up, we can go back to talk about him later on with regards to the screenplay. He said you won't get this produced in Australia, and I think he was right. And the screenplay was pretty. It was different to the graphic novel. I was in my Fight Club stage, and I had no idea how to write a script. I sat down and wrote a script.
Yep.
And I had no idea about
no schooling, no go to those like the book world and get the film scripts for idiots or whatever those books were called at the time. Nothing. Just it's coming out, man.
It's coming out. And I wrote what I thought would look like a screenplay. No idea of minute per page, overarching themes, subtext, protagonist, blah blah blah, and some of that stuff can, while good, can inhibit you just as much. Which is getting back to the purity we were talking about before. So, with regards to my decision to release it as a graphic novel, and this harkens back to me saying before about knowing nothing is a place of power, because I didn't know what was out. I didn't know the scene. I didn't know what people read. I didn't know if there's anything like the list. I just had to get it out, and I wrote it. And because I knew the chances of being a film are very slim, I thought, well, the next visual medium that is just as powerful, which would suit this, is a comic. So I sat down and wrote what I thought would be a comic script. And then I'm like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? What do I do? I don't know anyone. How do I make this into a comic?
Yeah.
And I just put it away, Leigh. I just put it away. The experience of writing it, I still remember. I wrote the entire thing in a night. It was awful because it was a stream of consciousness.
But it had to come out.
It had to come out. It wasn't this. There was no structure. It wasn't panel this. It wasn't. It wasn't any of that. There were none of the headings that you see, that the chapter breaks. It was just the story, and it started with the father and the son in the car.
Yeah.
But it had a different ending, and there were different events throughout it. I don't even think the angel was in it. And I put it away, and I didn't think of it because I didn't know what to do with it. And it was only when I was moving into a place in 2004 with a mate of mine, I was unpacking and I pulled it out, and I'm like, oh shit, here's the list. And I sat down and I started reading it, and I'm like, yeah, I should do something with this. It would be nice to have it. It'd be nice to hold it as a book, And it brought back everything that I felt when I wrote it.
You do whatever you need to do.
You're saying PG before, so I'm trying to be.
No, man, if you let it go because it's in the story and you vibe and you do it, brother.
Cool. I mean, if anyone who's watching this is PG, then go and read the book. They're gonna see a few words.
Yeah.
When I wrote it, I felt sick. You know,
Yep.
it was so much. It's probably like, well, I know what it's like going into therapy and talking, you know, deep with people that have come into my life, really special people. I could see that you and I could have that connection, and we could just sit down and chat for weeks. And I'm at that time, it was difficult to read it because it brought up everything that was related to its reading, to its writing. Sorry, which we can get into. And then I did the only thing I thought I could do to get this thing produced was I either caught a train or drove into the city and went to Minotaur on Elizabeth Street, and I looked in the back of Australian comic books for contacts. I'm like, what do I do? And it was the least expected person wrote back to me, who is Avi Burnshaw. I don't know if you know of Avi. He was sort of, he ran conventions, and he produced a manga sort of compilation done by Australian and I think international artists who would submit short stories. It was called Otaku. I think it was called Otaku. Oztaku as an Australian.
Okay. And
he wrote back to me. He was the only person who wrote back. And I was like, someone's written back. It's a big comic publisher. Because I didn't know if there was. I didn't know the scene. Like, were there Australian publishers? Are there just blokes in their you know, do they have a photocopy machine? Does their mum have one at work that they use?
Does it over the coffee? I've just got to make this off for the son, or he'll pester me all night. You know,
that's right. That's right. Staple it together for him and put it on Minotaur's shelf for free. And he wrote back and he said, "Look, you know, what do you got?" And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this I'd actually get. This was astounding. We're talking around 2004 or 5. And he said, "Send me the script." And so I sent him the script, and it was nothing like the script. It was still a Fight Club script, but it had the underlying. It wasn't Fight Clubbish, but it was anti-establishment. And there were darker scenes that they were own now, and it goddamn, when I picked that thing up, like it's a struggle to get through. Anyone could read it and go, yeah, whatever. And he wrote back saying, "I think I have an artist for you." I'm like, I can't believe this. Like, you know, I never, you know, my English teachers, I couldn't connect with school. I wasn't good. You know, didn't do well in school. I dropped out of uni, worked a slew of shit jobs. I had no idea what I was doing, where I was going, who I was. Any idea. Completely full of anxiety, completely like, well, back then, you know, there was none of this amazing conversation that gets around now. I just, you know, just felt shit. And the very thought that I could produce or have a work produced was astounding and revelatory. And I was so overwhelmed by what I came to know be called imposter syndrome, that I simply, it was beyond my comprehension. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know anything about this whole industry, and then the very fact someone agreed to draw something that I wrote blew my mind. And it going back to what we're talking about with regards to expectation and outcome, I both and you have felt this yourself. A part of you, it's just difficult to define. You want people to like the work, but you want people to like it. I knew it wasn't the next Star Wars, right?
Yep.
But when you feel something, when
Mm.
you write something like that, there's always a hope that when you share it, as many people as possible will identify with it.
Yep.
And that's a pretty amazing feeling. And that's why people create and don't just put things in their drawers. Well, I mean, I did, but because we have this I sort of like an unrecognized, an unspoken, like you were saying before, with connection is I think that what we produce has its own power and universal consciousness and energy that others will identify with it, whether it's one person or 40 million. And and when we were discussing before, when I said that the identification of people who identify with the list is the gold, that's what I'm talking about. So when I saw the first picture of the list of the son sitting in the car with the dad, I could not believe like that was my creation. Like I created that. I made that happen. Obviously Henry too. Henry was amazing. Henry was the perfect artist for the list. But the writer is the backbone to all productions, you know. And then the artist goes, "Yeah, I'll help you out, mate." You know, by doing a lot more work than the writer does. I'm happy to admit that they probably do about 70% to our 30, but it's different sort of work. It's more laborious. So slowly seeing the list come together, and then into the first edition that you are holding there, and then having that a reality, having that produced, and then having that a reality was something that I'd never thought, being who I was and where I'd come from and the kid I was, something that I never thought I would experience. As much as I sort of subconsciously or like on the back of my mind wanted to create. During my life I wanted to create. I did little, but a lot of kids are creative. Kids are naturally creative. My daughter just makes amazing things, and my son, like anything they do is creative. And slowly it gets squashed down, and you find yourself doing it as a parent. You're like, back off, you know. I consider myself to some degree. Oh, sorry, sweetie. Sorry. Hey, I'm sorry, mate. Grandma's going to call. I'll be out soon, sweetie. Okay, I'll be out a bit later. Mummy's going to come home. She's putting you to bed tonight. Thank you. She's giving me those eyes. She knows. She knows how to work me. She's adorable. So I love talking like this, Leigh. This is great. I just want to say this is great. This is everything I wanted it to be. So thank you, because when you get interviewed at a convention or via text, you can answer, but you got to answer reasonably quickly. But getting to the long gestation of who I was, right through to holding the first copy, to your question about entering it into the dropping a grenade into the Australian comic scene. It was it had a bigger effect than I thought it would. Like, I knew there was a power in it, but I didn't know if anyone was going to identify with it. And I'm not talking about power as it's a powerful film. It's a powerful story. I knew it had a personal power to it. Or whether someone was going to identify with that or not, was sort of the next step. And people did. In fact, some reviewers wouldn't even read it. You know, yeah. So, and that gives you some degree of encouragement that your vision has been true. As the name started to get around a little bit, the real power of and the real reward of producing it started to like come back to me, such as you know, people who are good enough to review it, you know, going to conventions and having people bring in their copy to have it signed. This is like, oh, I'm like, you're really, like, you were here to see me, you bought the book, and it's astounding. Other things like, you know, I remember this lady came past and she's like, oh, you know, because at the sitting convention, I always like to just be, how are you going? Please pretend I'm not here. This is a bookshop. Don't feel obliged. Have a flick, have a look through. And I said, you know, have a look. Yeah, go ahead, have a look. And she's like, oh, no. I read it last year and I couldn't sleep for 3 days. And I'm like, I don't know whether to say sorry or thank you.
No, take that.
And then there's other people who, and understandably, because this is with every work, that it was water for ducks back. Because that's, and I'll explain, like, I'll go into genre a little bit now, but the list was, when I wrote the list, I knew it scared me writing it, but didn't horror scare me. But it was sort of like, you know, when it was written about, they would say it was psych horror. And so, like with any genre, you know, some people it terrifies the shit out of them, and others it doesn't touch them in the slightest. So there was that side of it too. You know, I knew this was an incredibly niche work, and that is lovely in itself. You know, because you are getting to the people who it will mean something to, and it meant a lot to a lot of people. I have received and I treasure them. I have letters from people who, you know, before I wrote the list, I would hear about, you know, someone saying, oh, you know, your band got me through, or your music got me through a hard time. And I'm like, how? You know, what? Surely you. And then I had it said to me, and I'm like, oh, okay. And now I see, like, the power of creativity and creative works to literally help someone. Even if, and I don't know if you have the edition, but I wrote quite a personal sort of summary of what the list meant to be and where it came from in the back of one of the editions. And it talks about how even as dark as the list is, it's a positive work because it's somewhere that people can put their pain. not into themselves and not into others.
Mm.
And that's where I put mine. I mean,
Mm.
I mean, you know, I've stuffed up my life quite a few times and done crap things.
Mm.
I think everyone has. But once you find a process or a method or just a pure need to augment that pain and everything that's inside you that you do not like, if you can augment that, if you can get that out of you, it doesn't matter what form it takes. It will literally physically change you. Mentally, physically, they're all the same to me.
Mm.
The brain stems go right through the body. You are mind that moves around. So so what I'm saying is that anyone that is going through something, and there's a lot of people going through a lot, just the simple power of just putting words onto the page is beyond what you can comprehend until you do it.
Yeah.
And if you were leaning towards writing, the or being creative, which I think can you see my fingernails? My daughter's
Yeah.
opened a
Yeah.
fingernail shop. She's 6, so when your daughter says put fingernail polish on, you do it. And I quite like it. It's been here for 3 weeks.
Whatever makes you happy, man. It's like I don't judge anyone, Paul.
No.
Like,
I don't care about judgment. I
is
just
like,
I don't
oh,
care about
man,
judgment. I
say
just
about
notice
sports.
I keep forgetting it's
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you know, if what I suppose what I'm leading to is that if you in any way have some creative urge, follow it.
Mm.
Follow it without expectation.
Mm.
Like you were saying before with your drawing, you just start.
Yeah.
You just start, and you start without expectation, and you start without ego, and you start with just a place of I'm going to do this. You remove all emotion, you
Mm-hmm.
remove all expectation, and you do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And any judgment that happens outside that space, outside your walls where it was made, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter in the slightest. And that took me a while to get, because I came into this not having produced any work. So Jesus Christ, I felt those darts. You know,
Yeah.
I felt them and I fired back. And that
Yeah.
was the wrong thing to do, but I didn't know not to do it.
Yep.
And I love the fact that I've learnt that it doesn't matter what people think about your work, good or bad.
Yep.
It's great if they get something out of it. It really is. That's incredible. But it's all beyond your control. So I guess what I'm saying is don't let fear hold you back from creating, because fear is one of the things that needs to come out if you're
Mm-hmm.
in any way want to do anything. I'm sneaking over to I'm just sneaking over. I'm just gonna start playing my board game. Rolling dice and like, yeah, and the list, yep. Oh, we're 6. Got him. Yeah, so you know, at the back of Darren Close's struggle. I
Mm.
don't know if you
Yep.
read that or not.
I have read that, man. That's a great comic book.
Oh my God. You know, that is the list, but like turned even more inward. that has got to be the most courageous work I have encountered, you know, and I was gobsmacked when I read that. I'm like the courage to write that book was a place of such egoless, base emotion. And I just pick it up now and then and I read it and this is just astounding.
Yeah.
And Darren was nice enough to ask me to write a forward for that. And I wrote it, and it's sort of the reason I mentioned struggle was because we're talking about, you know, fear not inhibiting your don't let fear inhibit your decision to create. I wrote about that in the back of his book because that's what really touched me, was that was both a work of fear, about fear, but not written, wouldn't have been written if you felt fear. Like that's work. Yeah, that's right. That was work like the list that just you it had to come out.
Yep.
You know. And that is the best thing he's ever done. Like Killaroo was great.
Yep.
But struggle was that's an immense. I have not encountered another work like that.
Yep.
Novel, comic, movie, nothing. It is so unique in its self-exploration and so courageous in like having the balls to release that. He doesn't give himself enough credit. It is like, you know, fuck the list. Everyone should read Struggle. Everyone should read it. You know,
I would 100% agree with you. I've spoken to Darren on Chinwag before, and I've mentioned my appreciation of Struggle as well, because you're 100% right. I guess, excuse me, I came from meeting Darren and doing a short story for Killaroo, and then deciding through ego that I didn't need to learn anymore. I didn't need to cut my chops. You know, I'll just go and do my story that I've been working on for 10 years. And I don't know what planet I was on, man. And then it was a couple of years later, you know, like, because I'll touch base with you on this later. We can get into it, you know, because I love talking about it as well. Is I was shocking drinker and made a total dick of myself and just overextended, just bullshit, fake confidence, no character. When I look back on myself, something was there, but so you drink to, you know, because maybe I'll find myself, because you don't have the strength to look at yourself in the mirror, man, and ask those questions, you know. And it was around this particular time, because I've tried to stop drinking, oh man, I don't know, 10 times in my life until I did finally break it, you know. And I came across Struggle, and it wasn't just the comic book side of things. It was that comic sits with me. You just get certain pieces of work, man, that just sit with you and they resonate over a vast quantity or space of field. And I could take what he was feeling into, you know, my own frailties at that time. And, you know, and man, I've said it before, and I'm so glad we're talking about it now amongst this, is like, if anyone has never read The Struggle, written by Darren Close, absolutely do, because you're not alone out there. Struggle is awesome. You're not alone out there having, fear. One of the, I guess to a certain extent, fear is you have to break it. I don't know how everyone breaks it differently, but much like I suspect the road that you've traveled down, Paul, is when you got something that's got to come out, you can't keep it in because that shit churns you up, man, and you don't know what it is screaming in you to come out, man. And then you just have to, man, you just got to do it, and sometimes if it's your thing of on the computer, the typewriter, and get it out like you did that first time, man, where you just punched it out and you did it in a night, I would assume that the feeling of relief in you at that moment would have been absolutely immense, man. And you wouldn't even have known where this thing had grown or come from,
Yeah.
And I feel the same with particular drawings and comic books and stuff. I'm a huge believer in creativity, man, is so important to people. I say it regularly because I firmly believe it. Like, creativity has saved my life. If I did not know how to draw or write or paint or, do any of these things, man, I can tell you dead in the eye right now to anyone that's listening, I would not be here, man. It's been close, let me tell you, closer than what many people out there had realized. And the only thing that kept me here, man, was like, how do I get it out? How, and sometimes it is just a blank page and a piece of pencil, and a little bit of pencil, and boom,
Well said, Ryan.
Being Brian O'Connor, being humble in the face of enormous cost of creativity is where the biggest growth happens. 100%, man.
Spot on.
And I think it's in that moment where, like, I think you grow in that moment. You're pure in intuition. You're pure in the fear state. And in that moment, you are balanced. And you don't realize it because you're so raw in your emotion that your heart, body, and mind are, boom, they're right there. And then you go in this long search of, like, how do I get my body, heart, and mind, the chi, whatever any of you want to call it, the balance, the eye, like all of this stuff. And it's in those moments, man. It's just in that beauty of the stream, the flow, and it's amazing what you can do. And to be proud of what comes out of you, no matter what you do, is a beautiful feeling. To have those moments, like for me, Paul, like, man, I don't know, dude. I just wouldn't. I completely understand with you, man, because it's like, fuck, I've been low, man. You got no idea how low I've been. It's
I have an idea.
Barely fucking human sometimes, man. I don't even know who I am. And the only thing that's kept me going, man, was just like paper and pen, and just sit there and draw and focus and bleed on that shit, And
Absolutely,
so
Lee. Absolutely,
I'm feeling
man.
it. I'm feeling it.
Absolutely.
It's
it's our creativity is literally and scientifically indefinable. They cannot define it. They can't define it. They don't know where it comes from. You can have your different divergence of minds. You can have your chemical balances or whatever. That they cannot define that. It is not. you can't data point it. You can't extrapolate where it's going to go. And it is the only form of magic, you know, because it exists in a place where, until you're experiencing it, like you said, the overwhelming feeling is that it is all consuming, and you are so in that moment that where this work goes, or what this work will achieve, or who will read it, or how it will look, does not matter. And you are just right there. And all the best works are like that. You know when you encounter them, that in the process, in the actual manufacturing, in the word to word, picture to picture manufacture of that work, that person is not thinking about anything else. They could be George R. R. Martin, they could be Spielberg, they could have produced numerous creative works. They could, any successful creative. But when they're in there on their next work, on their next song, on their next line, or the next picture, that's where they are. That's where they are. That's it. You know, like the board game I'm working on at the moment. It's you know, board games are in like a golden age, and this is uber nerd, Leigh. You've got no idea. It's like, you know, one of those 40 pages of rules and war dollies fighting each other and all that sort of stuff, and I love it.
Yeah.
And you know, my co-designer and business partner Alan and I, we're launching, after 5.5 years, we're launching on Kickstarter in October. And you know, some of these games gross are making $2, $3, $4, $10, $12, $19 million going across the world, YouTube content, all that sort of stuff. And yet, you know, and my game may do that, it may die in the ass. Once again, getting back to expectation. And yet, despite the potential of those things happening, when I'm sitting in my study working on the rules, whether that particular statistic or mechanic is a +1 or +2 is the only thing I'm thinking about. And not intentionally. I don't intentionally go, I've got to shut out, I've got the marketing or the freight, the warehousing, the YouTube critics, the graphic design, the expense. And it just doesn't occur. And you probably feel that, and that sounds like what you felt and you feel. And I've seen other artists drawing where they're just lost in it. You're just lost, and you get lost in it. And that's the other side of the magic, is you are, you know, okay, you play a computer game, but the computer game isn't yours. I love computer. Oh my God. But it's not yours. You are experiencing another person's creation. If you're watching a footy, you know, you're being an audience to something that's happening. Playing, great. Playing, you know, that's probably the same thing. You know, so it's getting back to being in the moment, and it's not. It's almost like it's like there's no it's not, you don't put yourself in there intentionally. You know, it just happens when you are working, and you just feel like a vessel. You know, that sounds strange. I've heard other writers and creators saying, like, you basically, you're the vessel through which the work comes. You know,
I don't think that's, Paul, again, like we were talking about before. I don't think that's strange. If you were to have spoken to me about that a few years ago, I can honestly tell you now, I would have understand the words. I would have understand the literature of what I've read about that particular comment, but I would not have been able to understand the emotion or the actual magic of it.
Yep. Yep.
And I have, and I do. And and that, strangely enough, it's like one of the and this will equate back to what we were talking about, no expectations and stuff, you know, where I've been taught by my teacher, and it's fairly in-depth stuff, is to deal with my things. And it's not for everyone, but for me, it's exactly what I needed, is transcendental meditation.
Yep.
So I do transcendental meditation in 2 sessions each day. And they're 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon, where I have my time.
Yep.
And I won't go into my experiences within myself, but, you know, that's for me, that's personal.
Yep.
But my second teacher said to me upon my first meditation is, you must enter these things with no expectation. No expectation. And I didn't understand. And upon pondering this, because when I draw and I'm in the zone, you're with your thoughts, and they're not intrusive thoughts. Like, you know, people in the world have intrusive thoughts, man. You know what I mean? Like, and by intrusive, it's, what did this person say? And that person may not have said anything, but then an hour later, you're still thinking about what that person said, and they never said anything.
All narrative in your mind.
This shit up, you know, and you've created stress, and you've created all this unnecessary
that doesn't exist.
noise, and you're like, and then you snap yourself out of it and you go, man, I'm getting on my phone, you know, like, I need a break. And you go and do that. So you immerse yourself in that. And what I found is you can, you know, like, with no expectation, every meditation is different, the same way as every drawing is different. You can't sit down and go, man, I'm going to have the best meditation I've ever had in my life. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to nail out the best drawing I've ever done. You just can't do that, because the moment you do that,
you wish you could. Yeah. Imagine you could, but you can't.
Magic gone. You need to be there and ever present and in that creative zone, you know.
Yep.
And with that comes an element of peace. And whether that is through drawing or writing is a particular person's meditation, you do become the vessel. Because these, to quote, and look, man, I'm a huge David Lynch fan.
Yep.
And one of the great quotes, to paraphrase him, is that he sees ideas as fish. On the surface, there's little fish. But if you want to go deeper and deeper sometimes, and he meditates and, you know, like, practices other forms and things, the deeper you go, you know what I mean, through your creative process, you know, and the more in tune you get with yourself and the vibe and everything that's happening, the bigger the fish you catch. So the bigger the idea. Therefore, you do become a vessel, because these thoughts are there to be, like, caught, man, you know, and you are just the vessel, just to go, thank you, you know, boom, you know, at that particular moment, you know. And sometimes you get lucky and you catch the fish, and sometimes you don't. And everything in its own way is connected, man. And creativity, man, not just like, obvious, it's worked for you, it is still working for you. It is, if you took creativity away from me, man, there's 4-5 staples in my life that if you took either of these 4 away from me, or you didn't respect me enough to respect these foundational pieces of me, get on your bike. And I don't say that easy, right? It's sobriety is the biggest thing that ever helped me on this way. my meditation and spiritual practices, who some of you, I would just like to clarify without going on about it, spirituality is not necessarily religion. If you do want to look into it, please feel free. There's lots of information. I won't go on about it with people. That's for you to find if you wish. Believe it or not, my creativity is there, and it is my voice more so than this voice. My vegetarianism, which I've been doing for 10 years, just purely because it's just so indistinctly me now. And the other thing, to be quite frank, is kindness and love, man, which is what they're the things for me that make me function and make me move forward into where I am, and have helped me get from that point of low to at least the person I'm with you now.
Yep. That's a huge journey. They aren't small things to come across. They are not small things. They are huge things to come across, and a lot of people don't get there.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get there.
You're like, because I don't get often to talk to people like in this regard. So like, if I'm overstepping, please let me know.
Overstepping nothing. No, it's sad how rare it is you can talk to people like this. I've got a handful of friends. You know Bobby Nadovich did digested comic and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so
I know digestive. Yes.
Okay, so that he's the creator of digested, artist and writers of digested. We were like this, right? Incredibly articulate, deep guy. Really interesting way of thinking. And after I sort of moved away from the comic scene, had kids, all that sort of gear, we drifted, and we had sort of really sporadic contact. And I think the last time we spoke was around, it must have been 2000, like in the mid-teens, around there, late teens, around there. And we're the sort of guys who could talk really deep or just trash a shit out of each other, right? we've had interviews, and it's just sledging the shit out of each other the whole time, and just laughing, it was great.
Yeah.
And I rang him the other day. I just rang him. And it was incredible. I had an incredible day that day. My Friday, I came home and told my wife, and I said there was something strange about today. I don't know what it was, but I felt like I'd taken cocaine. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it was. It started, and when I first said, it's sad that these interactions are so rare. There's another interaction I have nearly every day, which is also rare. On my way to work, there's a guy who stands out on his footpath and just waves to everyone. He just waves and kisses and like, oh, like this, Joe, oh, like this. And first time I'm like, hi mate, yeah, how you going? All right, fair enough. And one of the sad things is that you have that reaction because you're projecting onto them like you're weirdo.
Yeah.
And then one day, like I just kept on driving past him. He's sort of a bit out of the way, but I like waving to him.
Yep.
And one day I stopped. I mean, I got to the point where I was enthusiastically giving the thumbs up as I was driving past. And all that.
He'd become an important part of your daily ritual.
Part of the day. Yep.
He's this happy dude.
Yep.
Like
you come across someone like that, you embrace it.
Yeah.
Initially, of course, you have the initial but unfortunately, that's been sort of pounded into us. Be wary. Be wary of God. Be wary of friendly people.
Yeah.
And one day I stopped, and he walked up and just gave me a hug. You know, I'm like, I'm waving. I go to the car and I'm waving, and he walked up, he gave me a hug. He's like, "Thanks for stopping." And I initially thought, I don't know all the terminology for it. I thought he was like maybe heavily autistic or something,
Yep.
or
Yep.
maybe he's just he stands out the front and
He was a
he's
special person.
a special person,
Something.
and just yeah, and that's great. And that's what he does, and he lifts people up.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. He was just like you and me chatting. Um, and it was such an incredible thing to stand there and talk to this man who just decided that one day he's going to stand out there and wave to everyone.
Yeah.
And, I stood there for a good 15, 20 minutes because I intentionally go out of my way and go a bit earlier so I can stop and talk to him, And, we slowly got to know each other a little more. And, as we talk, he still waves to everyone that's going past. And, it turns out that he had to flee for his life from war, and his younger brother was murdered when he was 23 and found with 134 bullets in him.
Yeah.
And he's from Lebanon, and like when you talk about trauma, shit a brick. He has no one left. He's got no one. They've all been killed. But when you're saying before, I hope you don't mind broaching this stuff. I'm like, broach away, because that's, when you get the opportunity, when you get those, sadly, rare opportunities to meet people like yourself, or like Nazi, the guy who waves, or the guy who, my mate Jay. 1996 was an incredible year because I bought out Road Warrior with Mattel. And I met my mate Jay. And when I spoke to Jay, it was like meeting you, right? So I'd never met anyone like that in my life. Never had a conversation like that in my whole life. It's always mates and drinking and wow, and then you come across this person and they show you an entire new universe. Things you did not, and you find yourself that you, like, if you are open to it, all this dormant need for that kind of conversation just lights you up, like probably people like take drugs for. You would have felt it. You would have felt it with your teachers. Conversations where you just feel like you're floating, and you're just tapping into things where you're like, I'm, you might have, thank God I went through all that shit and hit those low lows, because now to hit these highs and appreciate where I've come from, to be feeling, I don't know if I would have been open to feeling open to this conversation without having been so low to need it. So there is, you were talking about that place before, that horribly dark place, which I completely, I've been there. I know. That's like an empty bucket, and people who, and the drinking is you're trying to fill that bucket, and Jesus Christ, I know you're 2.5 years sober, which is just incredible. And I imagine you have unshackled from it probably 99.9%, if not completely.
Mate, I definitely, I'll put it to you this way. I don't want to get too confident on it. It could be something that if I let my guard down for a minute will bite me on the ass, man. You know what I mean? Like, and the fucking struggle is real to get through those days, man. Like, and it's not just stopping the drinking. it's the repair of every bit of devastation you left behind, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's oh, dude, mate, it's like trying to get a jigsaw puzzle together that's like 50,000 pieces spread over Queensland. You know what I mean? Like, slowly but surely pieces come together, and I've been really, I'm very lucky, Paul. Like, there's certainly a lot of people worse off than me, man. I've, I'm immensely close to people in this community have helped me through my sobriety and stuff like that, and know the journey I've been on, which is pretty detailed and sorted. I'm very lucky to have a mother that's extremely supportive. I'm very lucky to have 6 friends in particular that I would say, without the universe dropping them on me out of nowhere in the space of 24 hours, like what you said, people I hadn't talked to for years, people that, you know, like had decided after an argument we had 5 or 6 years ago in a pub over something stupid like a stool or something, and I hate you and rah. Suddenly that day decided to ring me to see how I was at a very low air bit, like, and just all of this. People won't believe it, man, you know, like, and I don't think I believed it, but when I didn't believe it and I look back on it, it was happening all around me. I just had to take that step, dude. You know what I mean? And then slowly everything went from gray to color, and then the colors have become fluorescent. And then you just see, fuck, man, beauty in everything, man. I'm like, I don't know, like, I can't describe it any better than that. I would probably just, my history, I started off doing podcasts with ComX during the Friday night drink and draw. And I was renowned, man, for having like a tally or 10 beers piled
Part of the
up.
identity. So part of the identity. Yep.
You know, and where I am now through my sobriety can be tracked, man, through like these live streams and stuff that I've done, you know. and it's weird when I've, you know, like, that's all come to me. But I don't know, man. I think I've learned you can't do anything without love, man. And it's, you know, people out there love, you know, Leigh's always going on about love, but I do feel love because for the first time in my life, I feel love for myself.
That's
and I feel
amazing.
love for myself because I have respect for myself because I've done things that I didn't think would ever do.
Yep.
And you meet people that are like, you're not successful, you don't do this, you're not successful, you don't do that. It's like, well, I think I'm very successful where I need to be and what I want to do with my life, and I don't really care what you think. I love you, but, you know, see you later, buddy.
Oh, look,
I don't know, man. Like, you just have this, I'm at that point creatively now where, like what we were talking about and you were with the list, is man, if people like my comic books, that's awesome. Like, you know, that's means so much. If people don't like my comic books or what I'm doing, that's okay too, man.
Absolutely
Thank
fine.
you so much for reading. The beauty for me is the journey of the creation, and whatever happens outside, it's not up to me.
And it doesn't matter.
I can only do so much. The rest is up to whoever's watching.
Yep.
And you
You
know,
can try and control it. Good luck.
you
Good
can't
luck.
control,
And all
man,
you're going to do is make it worse.
dude, you can't control anything but yourself, man.
Yep.
That's one other lesson that
Yep.
I've learned. And like, people can't even do that, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
they're too busy, you know, we're going to do this and we're going to, and I was the same, man, you know. And then how I did it, Paul, man, to the to the viewers out there, this definitely gone in a, you know, cool direction, but this is the Chinwag, and I apologize, I don't get to talk to people like Paul about this stuff very often, and that's how it is. People always tell you, And these are the processes that I went through, because obviously those 5 things that I mentioned before, very important to me. And we're touching on base and resonating with each other because you've got a lot of those things that are very important to you. And people come at you with certain things like, oh, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And, like they sort of try and pigeonhole you into these things. And because I guess I've got because I isolated myself for 12 months, man, you know what I mean? And came out a little bit with Chinwags. As I learnt something, I wanted to see if it'd work, you know what I mean? And I was fearful that it wouldn't, because I was changing. It's hard to kick that old tenant out, you know what I mean? There's a dude been living in this head for like 44 years, man.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like I'm trying to find out who that dude was before, like alcohol and drugs and trauma and shit, and
absolutely, mate.
And so I went through this isolation period where I was, I guess, gestating and growing and shit. And I started thinking about it. I don't know who I want to be, but I sure as hell know what I don't want to be. And I started writing this list of who I don't want to be, man.
I write the list. No, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. You do. I wrote my own list of who I don't.
I've got a dad joke in there now and then, mate.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. You had to get it in there. Come on, man. I'm with you there. I usually have a symbol here, but it's gone. Maybe I can find one on my phone later on, like a little. But yeah, man. And this list was like huge, and I just found it much easier, man. Like, what do I want to do with my art? What do I want to do with this? How do I feel about this? How, what am I grateful for? Like you start off with little cliches that they tell you in the self-help books and shit like that, and then as you get deeper into it, I went down all the paths. I was new to this. I didn't know what I was feeling and stuff, but the one foundation that I had, man, was my creativity and my sobriety, and I lent into them, and everything else sort of pieced
all you need, mate.
Yeah, man.
I mean, they're immense things. They're huge things. I'm the same. I've tried to give up drinking on several occasions, and like in my 20s, I drank a lot, and Jesus, and that is your demons. It's back then, man. In the 90s, there was no conversation about depression and anxiety, and nothing. There was nothing like chin up or die.
Yeah, dude. If you and I were having a conversation like in the early 2000s, man, we would have been ridiculed, man. Like to the point where it'd just be like, "Oh, I need to go and drink," or just fit in.
Look, it was. Yeah, it must be an amazing time to live in. There, of course, there is the other side to it where people are, using it for their own platform or for the wrong reasons. But like religion in its purity, if used correctly, it's an incredible tool, and the best tool you can possibly have is to get to know yourself, and that's where you've gone. I'm this weekend 4 months sober, and that is the longest I've gone in my life.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm proud of you and for you, man.
Thank you. And I look at 2.5 years, and I'm like, that's incredible, because like I believe from what you just said then, I think you're allowed to get confident and be proud of yourself, because I don't think it's coming back. Because of all the magic you feel like you have found, I don't think you would sacrifice that. I think you would sit in front of that drink and not take it. This is the first time out of the several attempts I've had. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew Law. Andrew, we mates on Facebook. Love his work. God damn, that guy's a great artist. This is the first time out of all the times that I have no cravings. I don't know. Well, I had initial ones, but they were so mild compared to the ravenous. If I don't have a fucking beer, I didn't verbalize like that. It was always like, shit, I can't wait to get there. Can't wait to. That's Friday night, or it's Thursday night, or it's Wednesday night, or it's any night. It's. And when you were saying, and I hope I'm right in repeating what you said then, or catching on to what you said then, is week after week, my life is becoming more colourful, and I am. It's like I'm unlocking parts of my brain. It's like I'm tapping into things that not only the drinking itself, but the follow on from the drinking and the culture and the desire and the crap behavior that I did all locked away. And I am now in this space, and it's strange because I never thought I'd be here, where after I'm 53, after all those years, I'm thinking like, and all those years, like you, back to probably 15, 16, 14, drinking, different amounts at different times, and a bit of dabbling in the drugs here and there, although it never really appealed to me that much, too much of a lightweight. To contemplate that it will never again be a part of my life is a welcoming thought and not a confronting one. And it is something that I never thought I would be there, because I was always like that. Guzzle them down, holy shit, I could knock them back, and that whole saying of one's too many and a thousand's not enough is, holy shit. Some nights I'd go out 6 beers before you go out, and a joint and a line, and I still never smoked, but had a few cigarettes because who gives a fuck. And then if I could change one thing, although going back to what I said before, I think it was necessary to reach, to grow, like to crave growth. You probably gone really deep and dark the other way. I wish I'd never touched a drink. And I have friends who have never touched a drink. Might have a sip here and there, might have tried it. Like I tried a cigarette once when I was, 14, 15, made me cough, never did it again, hated it. My mum smoked and everyone around smoked because it was the 70s, 80s. Fucking police smoked on the street. But, aside from probably having 3 houses, if I never drank, I'd also not have a whole bunch of regrets and behavior that I'm really not proud of. And a lot of just, fucking dangerous fights. Fuck, I got myself in some situations. I was chased through the city by 10 guys one night. I could have been killed. And it's, I'm not going to get on a soapbox because, for God's sake, I'm never ever going to get on a soapbox. But now I'm starting to, and you've probably started to do the same, where you start to view. It's like when it's like in meditation and spirituality, where you monitor yourself, you view yourself. You know all about that. So you don't engage the emotion, or you don't let it overwhelm you. You can monitor. You recognize it. That's the term. And now I'm starting to sort of view alcohol as a slow acting, expensive poison. And it is. You start to, all the things you heard about it over the years, which you ignored because fuck that, I drink, I love beer, holy shit, wine, amazing. All those things you heard, you're like, oh, fucking right. They were right. all along. But you weren't in a place, you like with a lot of things in life, you weren't in the place to do anything about it. Whether your demons were too strong, whether you're in the wrong crowd, but everything ultimately is their own choice.
It's also, and that's where the control comes into it. It's also having, um, like, things happen for different times. Like, I think we live in a world, man, where I know I did, where, at grade 12. So what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Like, if you haven't done this by the time you're 20, by 24, you need to be married. There's all these plotted out, like, seriously, like, I mean, like, what the hell,
When
like,
they basically give you a checklist. Do this,
yeah,
do that.
man, that you've got to do. And
Like,
if you aren't doing this
why,
stuff by the time
why?
you're 30, like, or whatever it is, like, you haven't lived up to expectations. Again, no expectations. Like, what is this shit?
Whose expectations?
Yeah, man.
And why there's so many unhappy people if that's the way to go?
Mate,
It's because that is all very that is almost the antithesis of the human experience, and it is it's like an adult peer group pressure.
Mm, mm,
And you were told to do this because I was told to do this and they were told to do this.
yeah.
And where's the questioning of it? And
Yeah.
it's great to have a car, it's great to have a house, but those things will not serve you beyond the purpose that they are meant to serve. A car is meant to get you from A to B, a house is meant to give you shelter, a job's meant to give you money. That's all they're going to do. And if you're thinking that they're going to fulfill you, or the only fulfillment they will give is that you'll get recognition from peers who have the same things and think that's the be all and end all to life. And yet they're all drinking, and there's depression everywhere and mental illness, and we have a massive suicide rate.
Yeah.
So and there's people who would go there, but for reasons don't.
Yeah.
People with kids or people
Yeah.
with an outlet like you touched on before. But there's people on the verge, and if there's so much misery out there, or even just massive dissatisfaction, it doesn't have to be misery. If it's massive dissatisfaction, you can't
think
tell me that those checking those boxes.
We aren't causing
Right.
problems if aspire to the mundane.
Exactly right. Yeah. So you are not stepping outside the box. If you that's an excellent way to put it. If you are not rocking the boat, you're part of the club. Come be part of the misery club, mate. Fuck your dreams. That won't work out anyway. Because I'm telling you what your dreams won't work out. I don't know anything about your dreams. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm telling you don't do them because they won't work out. It'll make me feel better if you don't pursue your dreams. Please stop. Please stop making me feel uncomfortable. Can you just stick with your shit job that you hate to make me feel better?
You're 100%. For me, you just said something when you were talking, and man, like, I remember, I've kept a journal of my sobriety and varying other things, man, and calendars and that. I track these things. So if I go like if I'm feeling a dip in myself, because you start, oh, what am I doing wrong? You go back and you just check things, and sometimes it can be as simple as what you ate, or it's people you hung out with, or there's factors you get in a rhythm, and when you start to really know yourself and things, I think when, like, I remember when I was like 4 months through, and a beautiful thing you just said is, like, you started noticing this gentleman, and he was smiling. And at the time that you're going through that, it's raw, man. You know, like you would be feeling raw, like you were saying. There's little bits of it there. You're feeling good, but there's a little bit of rawness there.
Absolutely.
And you know, there's times like where you
Yep.
just, it's got to be all, you've got to be on it, you know. And you see this dude who's lost his whole family. Essentially, people are walking down the street kicking stones and whinging that they can't get their 85-inch TV for $3,000 when they saw it in an ad for, like, you know, fucking 3,200. And here's this guy that's lost everything that absolutely means everything, that's irreplaceable, can't be replaced. And this beautiful human being is standing on the side of the street trying to pass on a token of happiness and delight to those people that are going by. And Paul,
And he went through 100 times what they were going through.
man, and majority of those people, Paul, would be so caught up in the TV not being $3,000, you know what I mean, that they wouldn't even notice that dude. And my point that I'm getting to is, I noticed where you are when I stopped drinking, that I started noticing things like that, man. I started going like, look at that dude, you know, like, I'm going to stop and talk to him. I started, man, like, I'd just be having conversations with people in the shop, man. I'm standing at the newsagents. There's some 80-year-old woman there grumbling about, you know, like a scratchy. And then next thing you know, I'm talking to her for half hour, and fuck, she's nearly dropping her false teeth out of her head, man. Like chuckling away and that, you know. Like,
People, they're just not used to it, mate.
Man, I was just like,
Everyone's. I heard an amazing, or I don't know where it's from or read it or heard it, where people just live in illusion. They literally live in illusion, and we were touching on that before, where and that comes back to attachment with regards to art or anything, is you are making that up, and you are making up 99% of your life, and that's
yeah,
what's stressing you out, and it doesn't
yeah,
fucking exist.
yeah, man.
And I
It
get trapped in
doesn't.
it. I'm fully aware of it, but I get trapped in it all the time.
Yeah,
Because it's so easily, your sort of like your default state is concern. Our primal state is anxiety and awareness, because that animal is still in there. We've got
yeah,
to take care of things, and yet it is now translated into things like, oh, I can't pay the bill, or whatever it is, that survival instinct. But now it's been manifested into, here's 40 million things to worry about. 39,999,999 aren't going to come true, but make sure you spend your whole day worrying about them.
yeah, man. And don't sleep
That,
and cause
don't
yourself,
sleep.
you know.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
who
yeah.
needs that, you
Yeah.
know?
So
Like,
all these people, you like the people we talked about before, are literally walking around thinking about things, stressing about things that don't exist. They have no bearing on their life. They may not matter. Sorry, they may not happen. There's a fucking good chance they won't happen.
yeah, yeah,
And yet, all their kicking the stones and whinging is a result of something that doesn't. It is a part of their life.
yeah,
Whereas Nazi, the guy who waves to everyone, he's right in it. Like he's a trance snapper. He will snap you out of that trance,
yeah, man.
and he does with me. First time I saw him, I'm like, hey, g'day, mate. Yep. But it still had that effect on me. It's like, how cool was that?
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah,
And then that one day I stopped. I took a selfie with him, and we chatted, and you know, and you're right. Like there's this sobriety thing, and part of the regret of drinking was that I've probably missed 10,000 of those experiences.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And
I
that
know.
hurts, you know.
It does.
And how much would that of how much more would I advanced as a person as a result of those experiences I didn't miss? So I'm way back, you know. And
No, no, you're not. You're feeling exactly what a person from my experience should be feeling. And I have felt in the same point, man, where you are starting to, and I can tell this from talking with you now, you're starting to embrace your sobriety. You know what I mean? Because I was caught in a regretful, how do I repair this? How do I repair that? And then I started realizing it's not until you're here that you look back and the pieces start joining together that the reason why that was happening was to get you to this point. And this point is the point for you, and everyone's point is different. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
That you can't compare what you've done with anyone else. You can only take your experiences and try and improve on yourself as of this moment. You should lean into your children, your missus, the things you've got around you, and you simply start with being grateful. If you feel like that, you know, those claws are digging in, man, you know, like just look at what's close to you right now. And if you break it down too, if you hadn't have gone through any of that, you would not be here. And you
yeah.
already mentioned pure love for your daughter before when you said, man, she's looking at me with those eyes. She knows how to play me. If you hadn't have gone through that in that moment, would you have had that affect you as so wholeheartedly as it did? I
No,
mean,
you're very right. You're right.
you
And I
don't
heard
be
that.
too hard on yourself, man.
Oh no,
Like,
no,
yeah,
I probably came across. No, I'm not being hard on myself. I think what I mean is I think I have there is a regret there. It's not a painful regret. It's more a realization. That's a better way to put it. A
yeah,
realization. And yeah, so uh, yeah, there was something I heard the other day. I can't recall who was talking about it, but they said, you know, to really experience life, the lucky ones break down. You know, but not the scary bit is not everyone recovers. Not everyone gets back from that. But if you can find a way, and it takes courage, um, more courage than getting all blue or anything like that, then you know that's the real meat of well, fucking life. You know,
yeah, man.
to be really, you know, to just put it out there, like you know, um, they're not drinking, and I'm the same as you. I have a few fundamentals that now define me, which I never thought would happen. The first one is creativity. We've discussed that. I never thought I'd be a creative person.
Yeah,
Everyone's creative. Sorry. What's that great quote? A creative child is a survivor or something like that. Someone who survived because they hold on to it somehow, even if it was shut down for a long time. Everyone is creative. That sounds like a cliche, but God, it's so true. Um, the second is my family. You know, God, you know, people choose not to have kids or choose to, and I never thought I was going to be a father. So there's a second thing I didn't think I was going to be, and is that is the only level of magic that exceeds creativity for me
yeah,
is my kids. Um, the moment to moment magnitude of their existence is overwhelming. And I have never been so um, aware of, and like, okay, so much stuff personally has never come up for me before I became a father. Like both dark and light, like really, like, you know, really makes you question yourself, because now you're a dad, mate. You've got a job, and that's if you want to be a good father and produce, you know, good humans. And I think so far I'm doing well. There's another thing. I think I naturally lean towards things I know nothing about. So I'll try that. I'll try that. I'll try that. I just like scaring the crap out of myself. You know, and the other is so we have the creativity and the kids and sobriety. You know, it's which, you know, and they are three things. So I probably have something else. You know, I live a very quiet life, and I'm probably like you. I think if, like, I was a super shy kid growing up, but then I discovered alcohol and partying, and I put on this false facade, like you mentioned before, and that I came full circle, you know, and I'm back to being who I was, not who I thought I had to be. And I've come back to quiet, you know, and nothing means more to me than, well, so easy to say nothing means more to me. I really embrace, like, the quiet life, and it, you know, quiet mornings, getting up at ridiculous hours, like 4 a.m. to work on my game. That's quiet. But even loud kids are quiet, because they're like a form of, like, just their screaming and energy to me feels quiet, whereas to people who don't have kids a lot, it's jarring. To me, like, that's quiet. That's what it's meant to be. You know, that's life. So those things, I'm glad you said your fundamentals before, because they sound like things that you didn't expect to happen in your life. You know, you always drew, but you probably never realized that it would come to the point where having that removed would remove part of you.
I think they also firmed for me, man, when I went through that, what don't I want to be, you know what I mean? And what don't I want to become? And I realized the importance of those 5 things was through fire, man. You know what I mean? Like, I've been through fire, and those things are what kept me going, mate, you know? And I don't know why necessarily to begin with. I can't give you an answer. They're not in any particular order. I think if you would have asked me before, obviously I would never have said sobriety several years ago. I always would have said creativity. I believe I've always, looking back on it now, I went to private schools, and look, I was baptized a Catholic, but I would probably think that I'm in line with just about every good portion of religion, because, as we said before, there's a lot of good in it. It's just the ceremony and the pomp, and dickheads wearing, you know, like walking around with staffs and, you know, gold bling and that, you know, like, and all that shit. It's like,
the antithesis to me.
You know, but I've always been, man, I've always been of a spiritual nature. I guess I just had to find myself, man, to realize that I never really spoke about a lot of this stuff with people. I'd always been, a lot of people that knew me well would always say, like, man, you just keep shit in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't even know what you're thinking. Like, they would when I had some beers, because generally I'd be 90% good, but, like, you know, some of it had come out and it wasn't so pretty, you know. I lost a lot of friendships like that, because I didn't have the emotional, I just didn't have the emotional, tools, maturity to be able to communicate with people, you know, because I did hide behind, and then, you know, it all becomes a cycle. You drink more, you draw less, so you get and create less, and, you know, like, I mean, it's all cyclical. Do you know what I mean? And then when you just go, I'm stopping that wheel, man. You know, I've got to pick a point. You know, I'm not going anywhere. And there are a series of events that happened over time that were far worse than the event that I went, nah, no more. And that was it. And I never went back. It was, I won't go into the event because that will remain forever within me. And with all due respect to people listening and yourself, Paul, there are only a handful of people that I'm willing to share that with, because that is of deeply personal nature to me. But that was the first time in my life where I lay in a particular position and put a call out to the universe, man, and just went, fuck, I need to change. I need help. I need it now. I'll do whatever I got to do. And
Yep.
boom. And mate, was rolling. And that's what we were talking about with magic in this conversation we've had tonight, man, is you don't necessarily realize these things are happening, you know, and and they do happen in everyday life, man. You know, people just don't see them. People, you know, everyone has their choices. I'm in no way saying how I found my way is better than how someone finds their way, or if someone doesn't find their way. All I'm hoping, man, like for me, I know what it's brought me. I can feel the change in myself. I can see that your calm nature from meeting you tonight and talking and stuff, and we're just chilling and we're talking about a subject and certain subjects that some would be very uncomfortable with. But this is the point of communication. And this is what people, men particularly, of our gender, a generation, I should say, are and were not brought up with to be able to discuss this. Because if we, you know, I want to fucking cry because, you know, like something means that much to me, and you would just get met with, mate, toughen the fuck up and go and play football. All right, get over it, you know, and you bottle this shit up. And it does, it happens. And these are all like, it's communication is, I believe, like you can't get anything right with no communication, man. Whether, you know, kids, girlfriends, friends, any relationship, man, you know?
Yep. I'm with you all the way, especially with the bottling up part. Like, you know, like my dad pissed off when he was 3. Pissed off is the wrong word. Okay, he was 20, mum was 17. Okay, they were young. I don't blame him in the slightest. You know, we only exist on a jokey sort of level. We weren't close for a lot of years, and he is a man with a huge heart, but he finds it difficult to show, and he doesn't. He came from Australia, you know, before even what we grew up in. So when he left at 3, when I was 3, I wasn't cognizant of, you know, that he'd gone. Really, I would have felt it on some level. But then, you know, we lived in, I don't know if you know West Heidelberg, but you know, it's okay. So let's say it's let's say it's an awful place. Let's say it's just about the worst. Yeah, one of the worst. Let's say it's just about one of the worst you could live in.
Yeah.
So I had a single mum with, you know, like raising me. She was 17, 18, no qualifications, a smart woman but not educated. And so she was, you know, she had a kid thrust upon her before she even got to grow up, develop any tools, understand anything about life. So, and there were some pretty awful things that happened to her, which I think shut her down. And so, as a result of her being shut down, She was a good mum. She was a great mum. Really hard work, all that sort of stuff. But we did not exist on a level where we talked. And I went through a lot of stuff as a kid. Some of it nefarious. What happened to me? And I was also, born with a club foot. So I couldn't walk properly. I was on a trolley for a long, long time. Still couldn't walk correctly for a long, long time, and massively bullied about it. So when we start to move into where the list came from, going from being bullied at school to not the healthiest home relationship, I too shut everything in, because you have no outlet. And, as a shot, when you throw shyness, debilitating shyness into that mix, and, you're really doing your head in as a kid without even realizing it. But you just think that's the way it is. And then you combine that with the 70s and 80s and 90s where, you don't dare show any of that emotion.
Yeah, man.
And you don't even show it around yourself because you just eat it. And then you go through your teen years, and you don't, you don't have any tools. You don't develop any tools. You don't have any. I had nowhere to turn when shit stuff happened. My mum was dealing with too much. She was a single mum with 2 kids. She was working 2 jobs at some times. She busted her ass for us. But there wasn't that other side of things where I could talk to anyone about all the awful stuff that I both experienced and was currently experiencing. And that took its toll. So, when I got older and, like you, discovered the drink, that's where the demons came out. Or actually, it was a way to get the demons out into the bottle. And shit, I'd write myself off and get in fights because I did 9 years of martial arts and kickboxing and you name it. Like all the, if the demons weren't coming out via drinking, then all that rage when I discovered martial arts was like discovering creativity, because I could put all this anger somewhere, again, constructively.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, and like you were saying with your history, is that when you have no tools to deal with these things, no conversation, no terminology, no channels. When you drink, they will come out. And so while I'd never start a fight, fuck me, if there was the slightest
I'd finish it.
If there was the slightest thing to tick me off, I was there. And I used to walk around angry because I was angry. You can't hold all that stuff in. Humans need an outlet. What does Phil Anselmo say? The releasing of anger is better than any medicine under the sun. I love Pantera. And but you can only live like that for so long before
it turns to bitterness, man, anger, you know,
bitterness.
like,
The
yeah,
bitterness.
and
Yep.
it like poison, man, and it like it
Poison.
kills you from the inside. And
Yep. And
and
you're not proud. Like there's no feeling good about it, but you
no,
don't know any other option.
there's no
You don't have it. You don't have another option. You don't know
no,
where to go with this stuff,
yeah, man,
and that's until you fuck up on a major way. Like I can't remember like the amount of times I could have fucking died. Holy shit! If not in a fight, then in a car accident or just doing stupid shit.
yeah,
The amount of people I've hurt.
yeah,
And I've been hurt, because everyone, like, they're all the fucking same. Everyone was the same.
yeah,
But and some of us, like yourself and I, and probably the people watching, or we, found creativity, and I was like you, I'm like, well, what's the point without it? And that was a massive. I still kept drinking, but that was something where I'm like, now my life has turned around, and now I know what I want, and I can't believe I'm so fortunate to know what I want, rather than be. And getting back to what I was saying before, like, get the kids, get the house, get the car, and if you want those things, that's great, but don't expect them to be the answer. Finding the answer instead of being told the answer is the difference.
yep,
Because you can't be told what you want. There's people out there I know who are great singers, just tradies, mates, whatever,
yep,
who don't want to take that talent anywhere, because they don't want any sort of. They love their private life, and they love being anonymous. And and their wives are like, he could make us a fortune. He could blah blah. He could Australian Idol. He could sing on ads. And I'm like, but you can't make someone want something.
yeah,
And for what reason? Why would you push? The worst thing you could do is push someone creatively.
yeah, man. It's
The most natural, personal thing in the world.
and it has to come that way. That's the flow. Like if you force it, it won't work. And you can read that. Like, man, if anyone's got their self-help books, or they want to read like Buddhist books and all that sort of stuff, like one of the things, because man, believe me, I've been down a deep hole here trying to find within.
Yep.
And it's a work in progress. Don't think don't think that my greatest enlightenment, man, was realizing I believe enlightenment's all bullshit, because when you think you're enlightened, you're so far away from being enlightened, man. You know what I mean? It's like, so don't go spruiking that. It's like, come on now, because it's like, it's learning. It's every step is learning every day.
There's no end. There's no end.
There's just no end, man. And
Yep.
I would say that, man, I think I love the Aldo Huxley quote, and he was nearing the end of his life, and he said, after 45 years of studying people as to how they could treat each other better, the only thing I can come down to is just be kind, and at the end of the day, you can break everything down, but if you're kind to people around you, if you're kind to yourself, then you do start noticing little things happening, and things start going in your favor. And I'm not talking suddenly you're going to walk outside and trip over a bucket of like $500, you know what I mean? But you'll be walking down the street, and suddenly someone will go, oh, good morning, and you'll just be like, hello, how you going? And it starts slow, you know what I mean? It doesn't start, like as in, bang, like it just starts slow, and you just build things up, and then that filters into every facet of your life, man.
It's so strange. It's like a magic. It's like people can pick up on it. It's like I tell my kids that the attitude you put out is the attitude you get back.
100%, man.
And, you know,
100%.
the way, as a perspective is everything. Like the way you view the world, what you want to see is what you will see.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so simple.
Yep. And
You
it
know,
is. And if
if
you
you
want
want
to
to
see
see,
division in people and countries and different things like that, I don't know how you get that, because kids aren't. They aren't born with that. They're trained in that. They're shown that, and
yep,
it's all like, this is what I mean. Like everything, like, you know, you can break it down, like, again, like the connectivity of things. Whether it's the comic book community, you and me having, you know, met 30 years ago to where we are now, having this conversation.
allegedly.
Yeah, man, allegedly, you know, yeah, and um, and you know, like the cycle of like animals and life. If you cut down a tree, you're taking fucking, you know, like that koala's home away, which means it's got, you know, like, I mean, everything. You look at
Everything,
everything, man. Like, it's
everything.
all joined together and shit. And like your action creates a reaction, and it's the duality. And if, you know, words have power, and oh man, like you could just, it's a loop. Everything's a loop. That's what I mean. That's why I did come to the conclusion, man. Like, it was only recently, man. Like, I haven't even told like one of my great mates of late, um, this one, but I don't know how, in a strange way. Here you go. This is all weird stuff. So my mum moved away when I was 18, and like my dad died when I was 20, and I'd never not lived with my mum for a long time, you know, and I'm by myself because, look, I won't go into details again, certain things that I have to keep for myself, you know, like, I can't give everything away, you know, but I had a relationship breakdown that was pretty fucking bad. And to put it down in a very simple layman's term, is that I realized that sobriety was what I needed. And my partner at the time, she decided that she wanted to keep drinking. And two people that think differently along such a depth of thought in that regard cannot survive the process. So therefore, paths, in, you know, dissect.
Yep.
And I went into seclusion for, you know, 14, 15 months. And like, my mum's my mum. I love my mum, you know, but much like yours, Paul, you know, like, worked very hard. My dad was only on the scene, but left a huge mark for about 7 years of my life. And mum and I was probably more a dad sort of a guy, you know what I mean, than a mum. And it's no disrespect to mum. I love my mum, you know, like, fuck, he's always been there.
Yep.
But it just became evident of late through a personal thing that happened with my mother, and it became aware to me that she was in a crisis to an extent, or if something wasn't done within the next 12 months, it was going to turn into something very, very bad. Like, you know, of that I won't get into either. That's her story.
Yep.
And for the first time in my life, I was able to help her and go to her and offer a solution wholeheartedly and say, it's my turn to help you now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And far out, man, that was where everything just fucking went ka-dong. And I don't know, man, I can't explain the weird, I don't know, man. It was like, I just lifted like 2 feet off the ground, man. I was like bulletproof for days. Everything just, all the dots joined, like, just whoop, everything there. And like, you know, there's work to do, but like, that was the moment where it was just like, okay, everything. That's where it was like, fuck, man, there ain't no I. Leigh only exists because mum and dad call me Leigh. I'm just a ball of energy in a sack of skin and skeleton bouncing around, man, you know.
Yeah, we forget
Like,
that.
oh
We
man.
forget that.
And, like,
It's always to
you know,
forget. Oh shit,
Yeah.
we're out of cornflakes.
And
You know,
it's like, it just
I
all
can't
makes
believe
sense.
there are no sock pairs. I can't. Like, and then contemplate for that 5 minutes. How do we not have any socks? And then you get lost and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, and then
Yeah.
you sit back and you go, "This is an astounding journey I'm on," and yet we get caught up in such trivial shit. But unfortunately, that's also part of survival. But I suppose if we lived in a constant state of sort of spiritual transcendence, well, I don't think we could. Can we? I don't think we could. I think we're very. I think the real magic is that we are, on some level, still animals who are capable of these sort um, of, you know, this kind of adventure.
I think that's the best way we need to look at life, mate, is, people are scared of change, where change is an essential for growth. Change is scary, but that comes to the fear. You need to break your fear. This is all part of the flow. This is part of letting go of the bank that you're so desperately clinging on to. Don't resist. Just flow, man. Like, don't just flow, you know what I mean? Like, aimlessly,
Yep.
but maybe approach things with intent. And I'm not talking about intention with malice. I'm talking about intention with direction. This is what I'm realizing, is know what you want to do today. Know what you want to do tomorrow. Know what, know what you want for yourself.
Intent is absolutely the right word, and you can absolutely flow through magically, like I do, like with regards to the creation of a board game, but I approach it in a militaristic mindset. I'm up at 4 a.m.
Yep.
and I will do an hour or an hour and a half before I go back to work, and or I take off to work, and then on the weekends I'll be up the same and spend anywhere up to 6 or 7 hours. So you're right, it is not flowing through like a fairy on the wind. It is purposeful thinking, and as much as creativity is magic, it requires sustenance and work, like you're saying before, where your drinking overtook your drawing, and that shuts down part of you, and that shuts down the important part, which again obviously is, it found its way out again because it has to. Creativity is something that can be silenced, but it can't be stopped. And if you stop it, I don't understand like directors and writers and the like who say I've retired and announce it. Firstly, announcing it publicly is an ego move. I don't know if they're looking for like people to say, no, the great blah blah, don't stop. Secondly, that's not their choice. Christopher Nolan, he's like, oh, I've retired, I'm not making any more films. 5 films ago. You don't know who you are, mate. Like, I don't mean it in disrespect to his work. What I mean is, as it surprises me that someone who produces that kind of work would say something like that. And I don't know him. Maybe he was going through a crisis or the like. But firstly, you probably don't say those things publicly because that's creativity. That's an incredibly personal choice on your part.
Yeah.
I love love's the wrong word. I respect a band or a creator that just fades and just they probably move into different kinds of work. Say, for example, my favorite band is Tool.
Yeah.
And I can just see them one day just not releasing anything. They just stop. Pink Floyd just stopped. I don't think they're the kind of band. I would be disappointed if they said we're breaking up. I don't understand the we're breaking up thing. Like, it's okay. You're essentially you're very much a public entity, but what you create remains personal. It's like with the George R. R. Martin thing with his books, right? You know, he hasn't stopped being creative, but I honestly think he's made the quiet decision to not continue that particular work, and a lot of people are disappointed because they want their bookie, you know. So they can then turn around and bag him out, like, why it takes so long, and rip him apart. But I think creativity itself cannot be stopped. You can try and bottle it, but you'll just, the bottle's going to explode. There can be you can probably have long pauses or long space of time between projects. I'll only pursue something that makes my heart go all aflutter.
Yep.
I have several scripts and games and all that sort of things that I haven't not stopped. I haven't stopped them. But it's it's like it's not their time type of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas with the list, like, that told me, like, coming out. But Road Warrior was my board game. That was something I stumbled into.
Yep.
And that was my first sort of commercial thing that I didn't produce, that came out, and that was surreal and astounding. And I've brought out a few little comics here and there, and I've worked on a few other games. And it wasn't until for the latest board game where I'm at that, like, I like to call it positive obsession. Because it's difficult for me to it's difficult for me to pick a moment in the day where I'm not considering something about it, unless I'm thinking about, like, something funny my kids did, something funny my wife said, just sporadic intrusive thoughts, like you were saying before. Is like, that will be always on my mind for some. And I drive for a job. That's dangerous. So maybe Christopher Nolan had just a spate of ideas, and then just didn't have any, and maybe that's what prompted the retirement thing. But I still don't understand or maybe he lost faith in himself. I mean, like, with the list, started writing part 2, and I released book 1 of part 2. I don't know if you've read it or not. And I sort of contradicting myself here, but I'll be honest. I did say, look, I don't want to continue this.
Yep.
And I mainly said that because I think people had an expectation. But looking back on that, I went into the personal reasons of why. And the list 2, I felt, was, I really like this. I think the power of the list was because it doesn't answer your questions. It makes you answer. You come up with your own answers. And great. People have come to me, and I'm like, not what I think. I wouldn't say this, but I'm like, that's not what I think. But that's amazing that you will come to these conclusions out of this work where I thought something different. That's incredible. Where I felt the list 2, while I enjoyed the story, felt like it was an answer that I had to give rather than I wanted to give.
Yeah.
Because people are like, what happened afterwards, because it's the ambiguous ending. And I should have stuck with my initial belief and confidence in the work that a sequel would only denigrate the list itself, the first book.
Yep.
You know, so sorry, Henry. Sorry, Tom. To draw another 100 drawings. Geez, they were good. Those guys, you know, they stuck with
Yeah.
for 5 years, Lee.
Yeah, man.
900.
They believed in you. You know what I mean? Like,
You know, that's 900 drawings, mate.
yeah, man.
And you know, Henry was working full time. Tom had 2 kids working full time. I had no concept of what kids were like at because I didn't have them at that stage. But
Yeah.
I'd send Tom a page and he'd send it back the next day. You know, guy's
Yeah.
a machine and beautifully done.
Yep.
They were just, we were such different personalities. You know, Henry is a quiet, intelligent, contemplative guy who really knows his stuff and knows all about comics. So when he tried to talk to me about him and I didn't know any, it's a very short conversation.
See, that's probably it's strange how you just get some things that just work, man. You know, like
Yeah.
I've spoken to mates of mine, and weirdly enough, we did a comic book, a group of us, Spedsy, Ben Sullivan, Ryan Veller, and myself, and it was strange to see that or hear tonight that your daughter's name is Rosie, because the last drawing that I drew on the weekend, because I get up at 4 o'clock every morning, even when I am working, and come down into the studio to draw. But that drawing there is, her name is Rosie,
Oh,
and that's
amazing.
That comic book is called Ring Around the Rosie,
That's very cool.
and we're working
I have to show her that.
putting the pieces
Because
together.
that is her inside, believe me.
Yeah. Well, man. So I mean, weird how synchronicities happen, but there it is. There, it's like that's magic. Your daughter's Rosie, and there's Rosie, and like here we are. You know. But I would say from talking to you tonight, man, and delving because everything we've spoken about tonight, well, for some people out there may be confronting, some people may not want to hear it. That's okay. You know what I mean? Like they may be ready, they may not be. It's everyone's timing is different, you know. It's not my place to force. It's just Chinwag to give information, man, you know. Like forcing is power, power is manipulation, and power only hurts, man. You know, that's what I mean. I believe in kindness and love. Information, process it yourself, get to know people, and you take it as you wish. But as we touched base with those things earlier, man, is like I can totally see where the list has come from now by you just talking, man, like, and us broaching on these subjects and things like that, you know, the father, the son, you know, like just that quintessential relationship with, you know, like the boy and his dad, you know what I mean? Like, you know, how much shit you must have copped for, you know, as you said, like your club foot, getting bullied, you know, like, and then feeling $1 million when you were learning, you know, like martial arts and stuff, and feeling bulletproof, and like, and then having that like anger that, you know, can turn to bitterness, and like, you know, then you just man, like vomited this script that had to come out of you, and you immediately felt healed because there was like some spiritual thing that had to come out of you, or a beast or something, man. You know what I mean? Like, and then, you know, you got it out, but it also inevitably pushed you onto the path of like, you realized your creativity, and then a gift was given to you in your first board game, which created a love there in itself. You know what I mean? Like, and then like, you know, man, the one thing that I've learned about you from tonight, Paul, in everything we've spoken about, man, is very early on when you were introducing yourself, you said that you mentioned the word hope. And I think that hope is a very important word for anyone and for everyone to think about, because even though Paul mentioned that this is a dark comic book, it's confronting. It certainly I like mystery, and it did leave me with questions, and it allowed me to play in the theatres of my mind as to where I thought the story was going and what would happen. And like I've wondered for a long time, like about it, as I've said earlier. But there is hope, and there's always hope in like some of the darkest places, man.
Absolutely.
And I think that you've conveyed that with the list. I think you've conveyed that with your story tonight, brother. I
Thank you.
I man, I'd keep sitting here talking to you forever and a day. I've got a sneaking suspicion that this probably won't be the last time you and I have a chinwag, mate. So
I thought that about 28 seconds ago.
yeah, I think we've got a lot.
Like we've got some great conversations ahead.
Yeah, we do, man. We do. I feel that as well, 100%. Paul, for the viewers that are Ryan O'Connor, I need to replace my copy after lending it to a friend in like 2012.
Brian, what are you doing, mate? No, that's what it's there for. Like,
Yeah.
pass it around. It was never gonna be something I live on. It's something to create to share.
Yeah.
Um, it's I think, what have I got a few? I think I've got a few, and I also now I'm gonna spring one on you, Lee. Did you
Oh,
did you do any? Did you do a piece of fan art for the list?
oh man, I don't know.
I am not sure because I'm just looking at your art in the back, and I've been like, glancing at it now and then,
Hmm.
and it just the style strikes me as one of the pieces that I received, but I
I don't recall, but like that
maybe someone
that
has a
was a
similar
fairly
style.
hectic period of wildness at that stage of my life, man. I could have been drawing on walls for all I know, man. Like,
Let's see. Oh man, I don't know. I'll have to send you this one too, Lee. I think you might like that. Um,
oh wow.
that's another. It's called The Day I Stopped, and I wrote it. It was just one of those stories that came to me, and J. Mark Schmidt, who had a couple of books, a couple of comics published. I think you would enjoy that story. It is
Yeah.
literally about a guy who chooses to stop,
Yeah.
to stop. And I won't tell you anything more about it, but I will send you a copy of that. That's one I just wrote and gave away.
Yeah, right.
But
I
it was just something where, and it was, it was certainly something that people who had read the list didn't expect that to come along. So
yeah.
that's like post list. Um, it's it's a it's a story that I think I got. Taps into a lot of stuff we'll talk about tonight.
Hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
so
I
I'll have to get your address, and I'll have to find a copy and send it up. That's one of the originals that Mark um, Mark sent me from when he was living in Japan.
that's
Um,
man. That'd be awesome to read.
when he drew it, I'm like, it was like when Henry, like, you know, um, first presented the list to me, and I'm like, you just got it. And the thing about Mark's art is it's very sort of innocent looking, but it belies a sort of deeper level in and of itself where the innocence, yeah, sort of hides. It's incredible, and he nailed what is essentially very, it's um, out there sort of script, but he
Yeah.
grounded it, but also helped it reveal itself, just like Henry used negative space
Yeah.
in the list to convey its tone. Um, Yeah, I'll have to send you a copy of that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic,
Yeah.
man. I hope sometime somewhere down the track, when inspiration arises, you dabble back into comic books, man, and have a little.
I have. I've got a bit of a script here, right?
Oh, that's a big, yeah, a little, yeah. That's just first draft.
And that's part 1 of 3.
Yeah.
I wrote a massive fantasy script, because if you're right, you've got to write a fantasy script, right?
Yeah.
And that is the story. That is the story that I really want to bring to life.
Yep.
I was working on it, and work was being produced on it. It's called The Battle for Arn, and it's like probably when I thought of the climax of that story, I had a tendency to think of the endings first and
Yep.
reverse engineer them.
Yep.
That was one of those moments where I lost my breath. Like I couldn't. I was so overwhelmed by the rush of creativity that I remember losing. Like I was shaking. And I remember I was at work and I was standing on the desk and I had to walk over the desk and I was standing there and I was shaking and I couldn't breathe. And it just hit me out of the blue while I was working.
You're
And
like a conduit, man.
it's bizarre, and I know it's all just, it's a subconscious dripping, and it's all like, all my past experiences, but how it managed to funnel into just this one particular moment, which defined the entire story, and it happens right at the end, and like there is, you know, I think getting back to drinking and drugs and all that sort of stuff, people artificially seek that feeling.
Yep.
So it can't be matched. I haven't had anything match that. Um, um, that is the drug that will, you are hooked on creativity, and there's no breaking it. And I don't know if we're running out of time or anything like that. But there is, when I was saying before, when I mentioned that, like, the term positive obsession, there is also obviously there's a bit of a darker side to being so obsessed with art and creativity, because it is literally it's a drug. You cannot you cannot escape it, and it is one of these things where, because it is not frowned upon, well, in fact, it's lauded. Of course, it is. That you're encouraged to just smack up every day.
Yeah.
And
Well,
just
hey,
push
dude,
on.
you got to, like, because that's, I mean, look, like we were saying about, everything connected. I mean, creativity. I mean, it's a duality thing, isn't it? Like, well, creativity can be positive amongst all things. Again, you need to find balance, because one of, going back to what I was talking about my relationship breakup, one of the things that was brought up was, you draw too much. You need to stop being creative, that sort of a thing. And if that in itself, for someone that is essentially creative at heart and spirit, is an existentially almost eviscerating question, that not only were you trying to maintain something while sober, while someone else was drinking, in the vain hope that you could piece it together somehow, but that same person would stop you from doing the one thing that was keeping everything together. So there are sacrifices, I guess, to a certain extent that come with everything. There's gains, there's troughs, there's peaks. You learn in the troughs, man, and you take the peaks where you can get them, because there's not many of them, so enjoy them. Ups and downs, hurdles, that's all. It's all connected, man. Do you know what I mean? Like the flow, you just intent, be the best person you can be every day, hit it, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, do your thing, have your goals. I mean, it sounds regimented and all that, but the one thing that I'm learning too through sobriety and like getting up at 4 a.m.s in the morning and creating and like coming down to get better at drawing, and like this is all connected to keep yourself in a routine, to keep yourself, you know, like in a rhythm, you know what I mean? Like whether it's a song or you want to be bass or drums or whatever, you must maintain yourself, man. Do you know what I mean? You just got to be good, like healthy mind, healthy body, healthy spirit, you know, like it's all everything, man. You
And
know
yeah,
what I
it
mean?
rewards itself, and it's a cycle of reward. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's while I'm not a proponent of motivation, um, there is a cycle of motivation that comes with some level of denying yourself, uh, and indulging in the more positive practices. Um, you know, and motivation sometimes comes at the end of things as opposed
Mm.
to at the start.
Yep.
Um, you know, and yeah, like you're right. And I think one of the things, like with regards to, say, creativity, which is easy, sometimes easy, sorry, most times easy to keep up at. Well, you know, it's an absolute drug. I can't stop. The only times I can stop is when I'm um, not working on something, you know, in between projects. But then there's
Yep.
also, you know, then there's the reward cycle of not drinking. You know, my wife and I went out for our 12th anniversary um, last week, and um, you know, she's also pretty much stopped. But I wouldn't, you know, I would never ask her to stop. I'm like,
Mm.
you drink when you want, but I'm not going to.
Mm.
Um, and there was, you know, we went to Hillsville and got a beautiful red. Oh God, I used to love a red, you know. Shiraz, mate. And it was um, surprising to me that having a big old sniff of that wine glass did nothing.
Mm.
It was like I was smelling cordial or Coke, you know. Um, and then I felt like I don't know like what that is. I don't know. I don't know why I'm not craving it now.
Yep.
But maybe it's a underlying sort of like perpetual reward system of motivation. Like I've hit 4 months. I don't want to
Mm.
sacrifice 4 months. I'm
Mm.
unlocking all these things psychologically in my mind. I'm more centered, um, calmer, um, you know, um, and I just, you know, and all this stuff. If it works for you, great. But I don't believe that drugs or alcohol do anything to enhance creativity. You know, personally, I'm saying for me, I don't believe they
Mm.
do. They may for
Yep.
others.
Yep.
Um, and but I, you know, I used to believe it because it helped me to keep drinking. Um, and it's
That's
also,
the trick of the mind, man. That's the
yeah,
trick of the mind, man.
yeah,
Because
and
I used to believe
it's
it
like
too.
pain too. It's like pain.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know, artists work from a place of pain. Do
Mm.
they really? Okay. Well, I understand that they do, but what happens? What would happen to you as an artist if that pain was removed? Would you remain an artist? I believe you would.
Mm.
You know, and that's another trick is
Mm.
And that's what we're talking about before with, it's great that all this conversation about mental health and everything's around, but don't use it as a platform and don't use it for attention, because then that's going against the spirit of it, and it will cause more harm than good, especially the people who don't understand that you don't use this as a platform. And it's like with pain, the artist, create from a place of pain. Great, yes, do if it's there, but don't talk about it as if it's your solitary well. It was with the list, oh my God. But things like Hunted by a God, sorry, that's the name of my board game. That is a place of pure creative indulgence. Oh, what a lovely man. Oh, there he is, Daz.
Traffic for Mr. Bedford, legendary bloke. I would have to say, Darren, that I am in agreement with you, mate, at this stage. So, yes, we can both align.
Oh, man, he's such a champion.
I think we touched on anger before too, and when you identify emotions, and you begin to, because you can break down, like, not all emotions are identifiable either, because people are like pushed apart from them. They can't, and there's so many emotions now, you know what I mean? God, what's the difference between someone being, like passionate about their football and, like they're jumping up and they're yelling loudly, some people could assume that's anger. Some people, like people don't so not connected with people that they just misinterpret emotions. And I think the individual themselves, because they're not learning from other people's reactions and understanding their emotions, don't understand their own emotions. And then when you start piecing together emotions and identifying that well of things as well, I believe that once you get on top of things like anger, you flick into determination. You know what I mean? Like excitement, that's a good thing, but it can be pushed to, like you start, that's the balance. I think that also helps with creativity, is identifying, yep, this is good. Like when you said earlier about the list, you did that, boom, you just banged it out, man. Then you put it in a drawer because you weren't sure about things. It felt good, but you didn't know what you wanted to do with it at that stage. You just let it sit, go to work for a year or two or however long it was, come across it later. Well, I'm going to read that. And you read it, and man, it made you feel fully emotional. You know what I mean? And then when you came back to that was your recognition of like, damn, man, that's exactly how I wanted to feel. I've isolated those things that I'm feeling, and that's good to go. Let's get that shit out there. You know what I mean? And that's where the list came. That in itself, from what you've described, man, was like a full moment of self-awareness there, dude. Like that's a cathartic piece of work. Fully from what you've said, it makes a lot more sense to me too. Not sense, but it makes it. I'll put it to you this way: I'll be rereading that in the next day or so, mate. So to get a taste of what we've spoken about tonight, because I think that I'll be able to put it into some more mature and viable context now. Like after a conversation, knowing where you've come from and seeing what it's all about. It's a beautiful piece of work, Paul. From not just yourself, man, because I'd also I mean, you in particular, because it's your baby, it's your brain and heart and stuff, man. It's what you needed to do. But the gentleman, Henry, and Tom, I mean, it really is a lovely piece of work. And it's black and white, which is my favorite, because I think that black and white shows you can't hide behind black and white. You can hide behind colors and stuff, but to me, black and white pushes something out there that shows business.
Henry, that was a choice to not have the blood dominate, to not look like a slasher film.
Yeah.
And I think I always pictured it as being black and white in my head. I don't know why. I think because maybe because the story is black and white. It's maybe that's why.
It's like the natural way, man. You
Yeah,
know, like do it,
and
I guess.
yeah, and Henry and Tom, um, you know, that's for them. I didn't fully identify that they identified with it.
Yeah.
I'm not so much on a personal level, but you know, that was the first large form work that they. It's 200 pages. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That's a commitment.
it's a massive commitment,
Yeah.
and I think it was as much for them on a different personal level as it was for me. I don't know if it was like some um, creative outlet for them. Oh, I mean, obviously it's a creative outlet for them, but like, you know, on a huge scale, that's a
Yeah.
fucking lot of work.
Yeah, man.
You know, when I, you know, and sometimes I've written the wrong thing in the script, and Henry sent me a picture. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to put that. And he's drawn this beautiful. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm so sorry. The angel's not meant to have wings. You know, he's very
Yeah.
beautiful. You know, but Henry is a unique guy, where he's um, centered and grounded and articulate and solid. Like, I just always had faith in him.
Mm.
We didn't really we didn't connect on a personality. You know, we got
Mm.
along and we sat there through conventions, and now and then he'd sneak some gin in, or what did he sneak in? I don't know. I couldn't. Scotch. That's right. Because I'm not tough enough to drink Scotch. I like to have it with lemonade. I don't know how. I'm sure that like we were guests at Supernova, not meant to be drinking. I'm sure when Daniel and Tim came along, they must have smelled it a mile away. They were nice enough
Yeah.
not to boot it out. But you know, he was just, maybe it was just meditative for him. You know,
Yeah.
I know it wasn't easy for him either. I know, you know, I'd call it the Monday nag, because I'm obsessed. You know,
Mm.
I call it the Monday nag. Like, where's my page, Henry? Where's my page? You know, and but he got there, and in you know, in volume 3, which is, you know, it's all in one book now. In
Yep.
volume 3, I just saw him just go, like, in those pages he brought out. I'm like, Henry, dude, you just, the thing that I think made the list was the expressions, and I I could feel through the expression what I'd written in the script, in the panel description. I could feel
Yep.
it, you know. And yeah, I haven't read it in a long time, you know.
Mm.
I it's it's you know, without question, it's a strange work. It's a strange story, you know, and it's not, it doesn't have archetypal structure. I didn't know anything about story structure. You know, it doesn't make sense for 175 pages of its 200 pages. It doesn't make sense. But I think there's obviously enough in there to keep readers going, whether they read it on a surface level as a slasher, because there's certainly enough of that in it, or they
Yep.
read it on a deeper level,
Yep.
as you know. I've had psychologists write to me about it, like, they, you know, exploring the book. You know, this is what this means. This is the id, and this is the anima, and this is. I'm like, okay, if you say so. And you know, so there are. It was very rewarding for uh, to have readers realize that the violence was an expression of the inner workings of the characters, of the story, and all the subtext and themes.
Yep.
So you know there are a lot of creators in the Australian, not a lot. Sorry, that is completely incorrect. There were a few creators in the Australian scene who didn't like it and me as a result, and that was surprising. There was a lot of, and I know Darren. I didn't get anywhere near what Darren got it, but there's a, let's say, a coven who will try to undermine you, and they, when you create a work like this, you create those people. You're going to bring them out of the works. I don't know what it was they had against me.
Yep.
I think it was because it was my first book, and I hadn't written a comic before, and it did well. That natural irrational thing called jealousy probably came out, and I don't understand why. I wasn't selling, it wasn't topping the diamond list by any means, but and that was, to me, it didn't hurt me. I found it, because I dealt with much harder bastards than that, believe me. It revealed who they were.
Yep.
And it was a little disappointing, because some of them were very good creators, that they would sort of resort to that type of behavior. And then on the flip side, there was just an amazing group of creators, like Colin Wilson, who came to my wedding, Bobby, who didn't come to my wedding because I thought it was just an invite to a ceremony, but no, we actually bought a seat for you, mate. I'll never let him live that one down. Darren, Jason Franks, Trev Woods. Yep. I'm probably forgetting people, but people who, realize that, I saw the new kid on the block and don't really know that much, but we're cool enough to be cool and really good friends, and saw that, I was, well, a bit of a, I always laugh. I think some readers, when they picked up the list off a comic book store or whatever, and then brought along to a convention to be signed, they probably looked out. They're probably on the lookout for a guy dressed in black just crying. They just come to my stall. There's this bald bogan dad who tells shit jokes. And they're probably like, are you looking after the table for the writer? I'm like, no, I'm the writer.
Yeah, I am the writer, man.
I'm the writer. I don't live the list. The whole point was to get it out, not to live it. But there was, but there were just like Darren put it up before. There was just a great group of support, and I felt like they had my back. Whether I need to or not, I didn't ask them, but I could tell they had my back.
I think, mate, no matter where you go, you're going to get, I call them neggy eggies. Me and my mate do. It's just our little code word for them, for different people that are negative. And they all belong on an island on their own, because quite frankly,
tearing each other apart.
Yeah, man, because quite frankly, I would say, in my experience, and I've said it a few times, is usually the ones that are making the most noise do the least amount of work, and they're not prepared to take the chances. I absolutely bless everyone that has an opinion. They're entitled to it. Bless everyone that doesn't like anyone's work. They're entitled to it. Bless everyone that likes people's work. Doesn't really matter, like, as long as it's out there. I think people get the shits on because people do things. It is confronting work. It's probably not done in the Marvel or DC fashion or what it was for the times. It's certainly unique, the voice of the creator and the creators, artists doing their thing. It's made with passion. It's a venture that you and two other gentlemen probably never thought would get done. And in spite all of the neggy eggies, you still found support in people that were out there, and obviously still do support you tonight, and being on Chinwag. And to all the neggy eggies that are watching and probably listening, the dude did it. It lives. I've got it in my hands. He's got copies of it, like, so anyone else out there that wants to check it out, it is available. So Paul, I'm gonna wind our show down there, brother, because I think for
Otherwise,
the time
we'd talk for days.
yeah, man, mate, and I just think for right now we have articulated just about everything that we could touch on that has created the list, including personal things, communication. There's a whole lot of stuff. One of the things I would like to say, and I do, because ComX is, certain members of ComX community have had issues with mental health, and I am one of those in particular. It is very important to look after yourself. It's very important to look after other people. It's very important to be kind, because a smile can mean the world to someone, and it may
Change a
even
person's life in a day.
right, man. Absolutely. And even a phone call, a text message to see how someone's going, just to show you they care, can save a life.
Right to me. I'd be happy to receive anything if people, even if they want to talk about the creative process or getting a start, how to start, how they're feeling, anything. I'm more than happy to always. I've been there. And I've been where you have been, and I've been where they may be right now. More than happy to chat. Like I said before, the hearing from people who, it is the gold. It really is the gold. It's that's the whole entire reason. We're not in this for the money, because Lord knows it's not there, but that doesn't matter. What you get out of this is far, like meeting people like you, meeting the guys I did through the comic scene, the Australian comic scene, getting the letters that I did, the fulfillment of creating the work and seeing it touch as many people as I did. And so the way I'd like to, I want to pay that back is just, I try to talk to people who, I like I said before, I don't know anything, but if anything I say touches a nerve, especially with regards to starting, that's what I'll just say just before we wrap up, is just is people put too much weight on themselves, and that word again, expectation, I think has been a key word all the way through the night. Is you have to just be gentle on yourself, remove expectation, leave the ego at the door, and just create for yourself.
Yep.
And just don't slap yourself around the face. I gotta, none of that.
Yeah.
Don't rely on motivation. Just quietly sit down, and for yourself, just do the work. Just start. Doesn't even have to have a direction. A lot of creative works came from people just writing a few words, and then something bounces from that. But if you have the urge, then firstly, don't deny it, because it can not only change your life, but also have massive benefits for your mental health, which is what we touched on at the start of the podcast. and I'm a living example of the power of getting your just honoring your creativity inside you, even on a mental health level. So I'm happy to hear from anyone. If they want to write to me, they can get their just my name is right there in yellow, and you can find me on Facebook, or just write to me on my email, which is paulbedford1@gmail.com. Or I do have the list Facebook page where you can just join that. I don't maintain it as much anymore because I'm a board game nerd now. But if you can just, I'm happy to chat to anyone about anything. And, yes, I'll just put that out there at the end, Leigh.
That's lovely, man. That's really awesome, because that's what part of this is all about too, man, is opening up for people to allow them so that they're not feeling alone, and they're not, if you're not sure about how to do something, you can touch base with as many creators as possible that do Chinwags, and Paul being so thankfully one of them that is opening himself up just to pass on information if you're interested and help you out. I would jump on the list as well, Facebook page, because there's a lot of stuff on there that'll keep you, like like as Paul said, he's a board game guy now, but it's still available. And now, Paul, before we go, man, the most important thing that I want to do for you and anyone out there that's listening, mate, are there any copies available of this old Perler?
That old one. Oh my Lord! I think. I think I've got 6 here. I think I've got 6 here. I've got I've got one. Sorry, I've got one hard cover. I've got one hard cover, which was produced by an American, a Canadian publisher, but we won't go into that. I do still have. I mean, every comic creator has boxes of them in their garage. But
that's
look,
what I thought I'd ask.
if people, and that's the full volume. That's the entire book. That's the 200 pages. And if I've just got to say, I don't support it in the stores anymore. I haven't for a while. But if I think I've got about 20 or 30 copies left. Funnily enough, the idea sort of came upon me about a week ago, thinking maybe I should do a convention again.
Well, if someone wants a copy, mate, can they just talk to you?
If they look, if I don't want to, I'm not going to charge for them. But if they cover postage, I'm happy to send them one.
Oh, look at that! Hey, how good, Paul.
Yeah.
Bloody awesome. No, seriously,
they're sitting in the garage. I would much prefer people read them and experience them than they just sit in the garage. And if you need Leigh, if you need a full copy or anything at the moment, just say my word, mate, and I'll send one up. I'll zip one up.
Oh man, I'll definitely take you up on that.
Yep, cool. All right, done. Just
sure.
Email,
so I want to have a look at that other comic too.
I'll drop one of the day I stopped in there. So if anyone wants a copy, more than happy to send one out if you're willing to cover the postage. Especially if you got any American listeners, because I sent one to a mate over there. It was like $50. I'm like, it's all right. I'll get it back when I get over there. So, but it certainly it was made to be read, and it'd be nice if especially tonight probably gives it some deeper degree of context as to its gestation.
I'm really glad, man, that I finally got to meet you, dude, because it meant a lot. It meant a lot to me when I came across it too, as I said earlier, and I think it will resonate with people out there. Paul's been kind enough to give you his details for any sort of assistance. Reach out, touch base with him, or get some comics. Like please do have a look for Paul's stuff. He comes with, very high recommendations. Like, Darren Close from Killaroo and Ryan O'Connor's out there. There's other people out there, all of his friends, people watching the show and everything. I really do recommend getting that if you haven't. It does deserve to live again with and have its place up on the shelves, man, and like for newer people to read. And Paul, man, it's been a pleasure, dude. I'll talk to you after the show comes down and have a debrief and swap addresses with you and stuff, man, and swap some comics and that. But look, I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. Thank you for everyone that's kept watching. Thank you for everyone that will watch tomorrow. Thank you for everyone that's listening. Thank you for the constant supporters. Thank you to ComX shop that you'll find support the show and sponsor the show. It's the house of over 100 Australian independent comic books. So if you follow those website channels at the bottom, you're bound to find, like the shop. And it supports a lot of artists, and it's a good thing. Like, it's a beautiful thing, man. So 2 things I'll say is community is unity. And Chinwag is always and will always be made with love. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Brian. Leigh, that will stick with me forever. That conversation, that was incredible, and I felt at home from second one. So you really know how to just put your what am I? Am I the interviewer? Am I the subject? What am I? I don't know what I am. We'll go back to who again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was delighted when you invited me, and it was I can't believe we've been speaking for 3.5 hours. It was utter magic, amazing. Thank you.
Beautiful, man. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
This show is sponsored by the ComX shop. Check out comx.cx for all things ComX and find out what ComX is all about. We hope you enjoyed the show.